Hello. Welcome everybody to a lovely edition here of
Greetings.
Gatekeepings Anonymous. So as you know, according to the thumbnail and whatnot, we do have
In our backgrounds.
we got a special guest with us here today. So we're gonna throw our intros in here, grab ourselves a cup of coffee, finish up, and we'll get right back to it.
We'll
This is
have
gonna
a
be a fun one.
casual, welcome, casual chit chat.
Indeed. So see y'all in a minute.
Walk right up in the room like fuck everybody but me. Everybody but me. Looking like it's all good, but fuck everybody but me. Everybody but me.
You're listening to Radio Cosmos. Time to join
Joe Cool and JJ Organics.
lucky winner of the Gemini Croquette Contest. Coming at you live from Floston.
Joe Cool, who I see in many different live streams. Joe Cool is a cool dude to have on all the live streams. This dude is there.
Alrighty. Well, I got my cup of coffee, so yeah, yummy.
I was saying hey to people in my personal chat,
There you
aside
go.
from sharing the hey, welcome everybody.
Alrighty, so we do have a paranoid American on with us. Why don't you
Special guest.
come up here and say hi.
Hi.
Everyone.
Welcome.
So we want a epic reaction here. Don't have to be, but we got a short little intro that we made simply for Paranoid American. And without further ado, here we go.
I love it. And honestly, it reminds me of how disillusioned I was because I grew up with Green Day as being like, I don't know, I thought that was punk music for the longest time. I thought that was the stuff. And I remember right around like when it started getting really political in the early 2000s, even like the mid 2000s, and just realizing, okay, this is basically Walmart with like Edge and green hair.
Yeah, Joe actually was able to pull and make the intro because we kind of both like doing something that's special for any guest or somebody that shows up. We try to pull something together from their channel to blend with having them over here on our channel, just because we're still learning a lot of the editing stuff, and we're still just kind of playing around with just ideas of being creative. And he was trying to look for a different song, but he's like, all that kept popping up was Green Day. To say, I don't want to be an American idiot. I want to be like a free thinker. I want to be educated. So it
How
was a
ironic
play
that
on.
song is for Green Day, right?
I know
Really.
it was a play on your name
No,
because he was
and also
trying
I
to.
love the little logo on fire because it gave me the vibes of the old DVD menu screen that would like bounce around a little bit.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember those. I remember the fishies.
That is awesome. So, tell us about yourself, what you got going on, what websites you might have, this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah, so if you don't know me, I'm a really annoying basket case, pun intended, from paranoidamerican.com. I've got a real name and it's not secret. My name's Thomas. Although at this point, a lot of people just call me Paranoid like it's my first name, and I'm okay with that. So I've embraced that fully. But I've been doing comic books, music, artwork, video games my entire life. But I just started doing it out for the public around 2012. So I'm a little bit more than 10 years deep in publishing all of this stuff. And
Wow.
I kind of did it from inside my little bubble in my cave until I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. I started to branch out mainly as a utility of like, how can I get more eyeballs on the stuff that I'm doing? And I just was getting invited on podcasts. And at a certain point, being on podcasts and talking to people on podcasts replaced my normal media consumption, like way less movies, way less TV, and way more just having discussions with people. So a lot of people might just know me from that world, and a lot of people just know me in the comic world and don't even know that I've got any sort of video content whatsoever. So I love everybody from all those walks of life. If you haven't seen my comics, I highly recommend it. That's where I got started doing everything. So yeah, I want to just turn it into a whole bio breakdown, but I'm happy to get into whatever you guys want to.
Right. So traditionally, when I hear comics, right, I think of Marvel, DC, stuff like that. So what's different with yours?
So I mean I grew up on those two. I was kind of raised by but Marvel all the way. By the way, was never huge on DC's got some bangers. Like I really like Lobo. I love their entire Vertigo imprint, but Marvel in general. But I really remember falling in love with like Dark Horse and Vertigo comics the most.
Mm.
And I realized maybe when I was like my early teens, like, wait a minute, all the books that I'm reading that I like and none of my friends are reading and they don't like theirs have spandex and mine don't have spandex. There's probably something else to this. And then I think over time, I just slowly realized that outside of the superhero subgenre of comics, which kind of birthed it, but there it also evolved as its own medium, just like movies. And there's all kinds of stories that you can tell through comics. And I explored so many different ways of getting my weird conspiracy theory thoughts out into the world. It started with music. It started with just like one shot little graphics, and the one shot graphics would be okay to invite sort of some attention about a topic, but you can't ever really explain the whole thing. Even if you bake all the different symbols in it, there's a whole story in that one image, and it's lost on a lot of people. Then I tried doing some music type stuff, but I also realized, and I'm guilty of this just as much as anyone, but you might listen to a song and love it and then realize that you don't know what all the lyrics are and you probably have never even paid attention to what the lyrics meant. It just was like really catchy and turns into like a mantra. So music wasn't hitting it for me either. So the next step is I really wanted to do animated series, and that just the time and money involved with doing animation, it humbled me, and it kind of had me revert back to doing comics at first. And I always thought comic books would be like a springboard into doing true animation like I was doing at Disney. But I ended up sticking with the comic medium because I just love it so much. And it's so much easier to get your ideas very specifically laid out versus almost any medium I've come across so far.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely like the Disney breakdowns. I didn't even know you had those. I was like,
Well,
ooh,
you
that's gonna
did. You
get
just have a
good.
lot of information in your head because I say a lot of stuff, and he's like, "Okay," and it floats around. But
I relate. That's exact. I really
yeah,
do believe in like osmosis of thought, though. Like I don't have to necessarily know what you said in the moment and acknowledge it. It's floating in there, and then maybe
it
in
is.
like a week, it might be 5
Yeah.
years, but at a certain point,
Yeah.
it'll like snap in and be like, "Oh yeah, that thing."
Yep. We do that, especially for Joe and
Um,
I. We're a married couple with 2 kids. I call them kids, children. No, teenagers, young teenagers. And we've been married 15 years.
15.
15 years, but we've only known each other 16 years, but still getting to know each other, it seems like. So, one of
clearly no
the
deal breakers so far.
No, that's the next stream we were gonna do, which was
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, and then you said
Airing out
you
the
and Joe
launch.
were talking through Instagram, and you had an availability for
Mm.
today at 3, and I was like, "Okay,
I was like,
we'll
rock on.
slide
And
that
she
in
was
there."
like, it was hilarious because JJ was like, "What? I thought it'd be like a month from now or something. Why so soon?" I'm
I
like,
was
"Because we're ready to rock it on." What?
Yeah, I like to get things done. You know, I hate putting stuff off. Like, because if I put it off, then like it loses some of the momentum. So if something's
Yeah,
it
happening,
can.
let's make it
it, it
happen.
it almost starts climbing shelves, right? It goes on the back burner, but then you're like, "Nah, I'll get to that later." And then before you know it, it's so far up there. It's like, "Nah, who cares?"
I just figured you were really busy, and it would probably be because you
I
got
am.
so
I
much
just I
going
just don't
on.
sleep or rest at all. So this is actually good. Having a reason to not be like completely engrossed in some technical thing. Like I love. This is what I've come to love more than media consumption. Like I said, so this is way better than my version of kicking back and watching a movie. Is having like an open ended discussion with people.
Yeah, it has come to that because Joe and I'm
Yeah.
41, he's 42. I think you mentioned you were in your 40s?
Yeah, I turned 42 this year.
Okay, so we're right there in the same kind of age group with I
Shit,
guess
in
when you
10,
hit
10
your
days
40s.
actually. I just
10
realized
days?
that. Yeah, holy hell.
So 10 days ago or 10 days
In 10 days.
you're gonna be 42?
Yeah.
Well, happy early
Wow.
birthday. With, like, cool celebration
Happy
of
early birthday.
Feels a
doing
little
what
bit of
you
like a
like to
death sentence,
do.
like a death march.
Death March. I don't feel 41-ish. Part of me feels like I'm 20 again, and the other part feels like I'm 80. So it's a weird pull of just
When I first started at Disney, the one of my best friends there, a guy named Robbie Pallard, and he was a super OG. Like he started at Disney when they first opened and worked there basically majority of his entire life. And I remember he was like the most youthful person in the office, like was always watching the latest shows and like knew all the jokes and the memes. And this is, mid 2000s. And I remember one time I asked him, because I think he was mid 60s when I first started working there. And and I was asking him like, why do you act, so immature? And I was like being jokey with him, you know what I mean? Like, why do you act so mature? Like, why do you know about the new music before I know about it? And I was, I don't know, 25 or 26 at this point. And he said something that always echoed. And he was like, every day when I look into the mirror, like ever since I was 20 something, like you just look into the mirror and you see yourself getting older. But he was like, I've never one day felt any older than the last time I remember I was in my 20s looking in the mirror. Literally the only thing that changed for him was that he just kept looking older when he saw himself. But if he didn't look in the mirror for a day or a week or a month, he would have no idea that, he was old, I guess. Unless, of course, unless
Right.
you twist wrong or you sneeze and you can't, walk for a couple days. I'm sure those things pop up, but other than that, that's kind of been my experience too. Like I don't really feel necessarily older, even though I'm getting older and looking older and the body
You,
breaks down a little bit.
it's really interesting because I was raised here in Florida in Pinellas County, near Tampa. I was raised here, but
Oh
when
yeah,
I
you're
turned
real close.
yeah, when I turned 16, right, my parents moved me to Michigan. Completely different atmosphere, completely different environment. I mean, the whole nature nurture thing. I mean, the nurture part, obviously, that's your family, that stays the same, but the nature, oh my god, polar opposite. And JJ, right? She was born, raised in Michigan. So all she's known
Like,
was Michigan environment. And when she first came down here, she was like, wow, y'all say you're this old, but the youthfulness down here in Florida is just remarkable. And I was like, even growing up here, yeah, you just felt younger. You could feel it. Like you could just go. There was the energy and everything there was just immaculate down here. So yeah, when we moved down here back officially, now we're in Manatee County, right? Just below Pinellas. So we're still Gulf Coast, but here in Manatee County, we've been here going on 3
just
years.
over
This December would be 3.
two,
And
just over 2 years, and
it really is a huge difference because
I
something that
never want to
JJ
leave.
stumbled upon before in her research was called blue zones, right? And I guess this is one of her blue zones because she's like, I don't ever want to leave.
I don't want to leave. I have so many ailments aside from just having children. The body goes through a lot of crap having children,
I hear that's
and
chronic. Yeah.
it's it just the cold air, the cold weather, the cold environment that describes say Belfer. Michigan to me is like cold. The people are cold, they're rude, they're snooty, just it's freezing. Even when it's summertime, you might have a day or two that's warm, but it doesn't stay warm long enough to feel this heat that's in this tropic zone down in Florida where I'm like, I'm still thawing out, even like my personality for being a northern person because I'm born and raised in Michigan and I'm still like leery of this friendliness, this southern hospitality going on. And I'm like, that's just still throws me because people aren't like that in the north. And there's just aside from the ocean and I love beach, every beach is different to me. Well, my parents came down 2 months ago and we took them to like 3 different beaches. My dad's like, okay, enough with the beaches. A beach is a beach. And I'm like, no, it's not. You live in Michigan and you have lakes and you have sand in the water, but it's not a beach. It's totally different. Even though it's fresh water, there's no salt in it, but there is a lot of duck poop and you get swimmer's itch. So don't tell me that's fresh water. You need salt water. You need a real beach. And I just love it down here.
Yeah, there's some
So,
really
yeah.
good ones. I was never a fan of the beach ever, and I moved to Florida when I was like 8 from upstate New York, and even in upstate New York, I grew up in a town called Oneonta, which is like a college town that was like mostly younger, skewing. I think it was like 60% women too. But I remember coming to Florida, I in like a paradoxical way, I had the different experience, but in retrospect, it is more youthful than anywhere else I could have grown up. But it's because we moved to South Florida to this. It's now a huge city, but it was this little like farm town called Naples that had like 2 roads in it and a school. Now it's like a huge booming place that everyone's going to like get their vacation homes there. But growing up, it was all old people. It was like no more young kids. It was just all these old retirees and like ex-Russian mafia and stuff. But like, and it was a weird place to grow up because everything catered to a much older demographic. And I don't mean like 30s or 40s, like a very old demographic. So it always felt like I was surrounded by old people, but it was probably the most youthful old people I could have been surrounded by because they're out, golfing and like out in the sun and at the beach and playing tennis and like doing, old rich Naples people stuff. So it was interesting because then when you do go to other parts of the country and I would say that a lot of this has to do with just not perceiving the progression of seasons in Florida. Like that it gets a little bit colder and it's Christmas. But honestly, it would be really hard to tell if it weren't for all the decorations that people put up when
Oh,
Christmas
yeah.
actually hits, because sometimes it doesn't get cold until February, March. You know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
Mhm.
lack of very cohesive and like like distinct lines. Like you don't see the leaves fall, you don't see the snowfall. So part of that almost
Yep.
just feels like you're just living a constant day.
It does, because that was the mind fuck with me going, my body knew, because we didn't move down here, but 2, 3, I'm like 41, so I'm like 38 years old, we moved down here. My body knows Michigan. My body muscle memory, how like that memory of seasonal change,
Start
I'm
clenching up.
very
You see the
in
leaves fall, you're
tune.
like,
I'm like, I'm looking at, well, the angle of the sun, because I watch the sky. The angle of the moon does its thing, but mostly the sun, and just picking up on certain things where I'm like reading it going, I know it's winter, but I don't feel the nip in the air, that Arctic breeze of change. And I don't see a whole lot going on with the foliage till even February. And I could still see butterflies. And it's like mind fucking with me. And I'm like, I love it. I love the
The
fact that I can see
butterflies in February. You're like,
butterflies
huh?
in November, in February, and of only a
mine was
couple.
like hard rainstorms with a bright sunny sky out and people just walking
Yeah.
around like they didn't care because they all knew that it was going to be over in like 4 minutes. But that was the
Yep.
biggest one to me. I was like, what? It can rain while it's light out? And that was something you really wouldn't see in upstate New York.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Not even in Michigan, unless you were just caught on the edge of it. You had to be on the edge of it, but usually it came through, and it left the day dismal. But down here in Florida, it just picks right back up, like the sun shines 24/7, and in a sense of that was a crazy big storm. And it's funny to say the first year we were here, because we moved down in December. So we had a very wet winter, and it would rain, and I'd get the kids and run outside and going, "We're enjoying this." And people are looking at us like, "You're not from around here, are
Yeah,
you?"
you could tell. Yeah. The other
I'm
true
like,
sign too is that whenever they announce a hurricane warning and it hasn't gotten serious yet, the people that start boarding their windows and doors
Oh
up like
my
right
God.
away, that's another dead giveaway of like they just moved here a couple years ago.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's the expert, so I
I'm the
just
native. I'm the native, basically trying to help, JJ and the kids out, going watching the news reports. I'm like, it don't matter. Like, none of that matters. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Seriously,
I love the
I don't
memes.
care about the warning or the this or the. Trust me, none of
Look
it
look
even
at the Waffle
matters.
Houses. That one's real. You see Waffle Houses boarding up,
Ye-
like clench your butt.
Yeah,
Yes, if
the
Waffle
meme.
House boards up, okay, then you could be like, all right, maybe we should put
They're like,
put
I some of
something
the
up there.
videos they put out, they're like, "Category 1, got my beer. Category 2, got my beer, and I tied down the patio furniture. Category 3, I got my beer and my barbecue, and the furniture's tied down. Category 4, I think the truck is packed up. We're ready to go. Category 5, we're just gone." You're just like, I like the steps. And I was watching those videos the first year coming down. I'm like, okay, so the first 3 levels are like, it's
No,
okay. They're just
yeah,
gonna
it
have a
don't even
party.
matter.
The hurricane
It
parties, going to
hurricane
Publix.
party.
Love going to Publix, and they have the hurricane party cakes.
Mhm.
Like a grocery store chain. If you did that in Michigan, people would be like, "That is so offensive. People lose their houses." And I'm like, "But they're realistic down here going, we know we could lose everything, but we're gonna have a cake
Yeah, some
and
Kansas
party
Twister
hard."
cakes or something. Yeah.
There's a celebration for like realistic catastrophes almost. We're gonna celebrate beforehand and we'll celebrate later. And we celebrate with everybody comes together and helps each other out, because they don't just wait for the emergency people to show up. People go to wherever the disaster hit, and they start digging people out, because if they waited, they would have died. If they kind of wait and see what the emergency professionals are going to do, they're
Mhm.
overwhelmed. They're still doing whatever. So the natives, they're like, "No, we got this. We know how to," the natives, the expertise people. And I'm like, I love it down here. The
Yeah,
people,
when
and
you see
just
enough water and little boats going by with people on them, we got this. It's all it w
like, "We don't need permission, we live here. Hello." I'm like, I love it. I need to go get my little kayak or a little one of those dinghies but they'll like just go around and be ready to either get out of Dodge or go help somebody. It's
I think there's something empowering too about the hurricane schedule that we go through. It's a little crazy to want to live in a place that you know is just like constantly under threat of removing your house because of like the hurricane threat. And I lived through Andrew and Charlie and a few of the other Irmas. A lot of those were incredibly devastating. Especially I can't remember if it was
Andrew
Irma. I
and
think it was Charlie in
yeah,
Orlando. It ripped
yeah,
Orlando in half.
Charlie hit.
But I also think that there's something valuable the same way that we're missing that progression of seasons. So maybe we're immature as a state because we don't feel the same aging process as everyone else. But
that threat,
also
yeah.
that constant threat of like you might lose everything. You better inventory your stuff. You better have a generator. You better have an idea of where you might get fresh water. Do you have any
Mhm.
shelf stable foods that might last you for a few months? And all of those things, if you've lived here long enough, you've been through that so often and it's almost second nature to like, oh yeah, let me make sure that I've got some gas and a generator and all these like kind of like prepper things without having to be full core prepper. You're just being a native Floridian at that point. But I think that there's
Yeah.
something healthy about like always having a reason to remind yourself to be self-reliant. Like the same way in like a weird analogy,
Yep.
but like Japanese destroy their temples and rebuild them constantly. But by doing that, they actually have a closer connection to what their beliefs are and what those temples represent because they're so often they're tearing it and building it back down. On a technical aspect too, maybe a little too nerdy, but one of the things like the Dropbox company, one of the things that they do, they've got these networked shards all over the planet, right? That's got all the data on it and backed up and redundant storage and stuff. And once every year, I think they'll just take one completely down. They'll just delete it. No backup strategy, nothing. Delete it just to make sure that their system's working, can rebuild it properly. To make because you would want to know during a situation when you've got the control and you're the one that started the fire to make sure that you know how to put that fire out. So I don't know. There's something really healthy and empowering about that constant annual cycle of like, oh my god, I might lose everything. Am I prepared?
Yeah,
Yeah. What
because that's what
one
I
oh,
what I was gonna say, talking to Joe, even last week, I whatever brought it up of saying it it happens to me all the time. "It'll never happen to me," kinda mindset, like, living in a bubble, that it'll never happen to me, but those people aren't even preparing themselves to I would say mostly women even, like, we have to look over our shoulders walking through a parking lot or walking alone at night. It'll never happen to me. I say more so if you're prepared beforehand, but are you prepared if it does happen? Like there's and just living in denial or delusion of it'll just never happen to me because I wish it, I manifest it, I put it there, and then a lot of times it does eventually happen. And they're like, why? Why? And they can fall apart, tear themselves down. It's not just women, but living in that not preparedness didn't never
yeah.
I never clicked with that. I was like, "How do we get
That
prepared?"
that is something again from Florida to Michigan, being up in Michigan for the 22 years I was up there. That that's something that never made sense to me is that mentality of don't worry about it, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah, that delusional, just non-preparedness, it never made sense up there because down here you have one word or two, Florida man, right? And to me, uh Florida man to me is just that constant, preparedness, taking care of what needs to be taken care of. Um, I mean, you will see vehicles around here that it's put together with duct tape and whatever, and hey, if it's rolling, it don't matter.
And that
Which
duct tape will
again,
last because it doesn't have to go through the winter. So you might see that
yeah,
duct
there's
tape
no
on there for
salt.
a few years.
And that's another thing that I really enjoy about being here in Florida is even the Leos, even your your sheriffs and whatnot. For the most part, they don't care, until something actually happens, they don't care. They'll just like, well, nothing happened. Be on your way. It's
tourism and the
which
snowbirds.
is which again is really nice about, Florida. I generally just I love Florida. I never wanted to leave to begin with. Never got a real answer as to why we left. I got some false answers.
You got gatekeeped.
I got gatekeeped. Let me say that. I got gatekeeped for certain
But you said you're in
because there's
Manatee, so you're still in Florida.
yeah, I'm in Manatee County now. Yeah,
It took
me and
them
JJ are.
20,
So
25 years to get back here.
yeah,
Damn.
it took me way too long to get back here. I was up there for 22 years. It just never, never again.
You talk
I'm
about it
just
like it was a prison sentence.
yeah, it
It
is.
was.
I cannot
Oh.
describe. Okay, all right, check this out. Um, real quick. When I left here, I was starting my junior year of high school, right? Um, when I went to the high school there at that time, they looked at me and told me, "You have enough credits to be a senior." My jaw dropped. I was
You
like,
got that that smart Florida man brain.
I was like, "Come again?" They're like, "Yeah, you could be a senior right now." And essentially, I did the 2 years. I just screwed off the 1 year and didn't care. Well, I also had to say I didn't wanna leave Florida. So I was already upset that I'm in a state I don't wanna be in, and the area I wasn't too fond of either, so going to the school and then being told I had enough credits to be a senior, I'm like,
You got
"I'm
gatekeeped
done.
again.
I'm done." I I graduated with the lowest percentage ever you could even have, a 1.667.
That's
I did
impressive in its
nothing
own right.
I did
Oh,
nothing for
yeah.
2 years and I still graduated. Now, most people be like, "Oh, you were this" no, no, no. Look at it in the context. That is how bad the schools are there. I could do nothing for 2 years and still graduate.
Well, there's something else too, because I absolutely screwed off my senior year. Like I had no right of graduating my senior year at all. Like I literally had some classes where I only showed up the one, two times. One was for the midterm, one was for the final, and was
Mhm.
literally not in that class any other day of the entire semester. But I realized too now, like after knowing teachers, and my mom was a teacher growing up, but teachers almost like police officers, almost like those Leos that pull you over. The second that cop pulls you over, it's completely his discretion if he's going to find
Mm.
something and you're going to jail. He can be totally cool. He can be like, is that a seed? Oh, is your headlight out a little bit? Like he can find something if he needs to
Mhm.
find the thing. So in the same way, teachers, at least in public school, I assume all teachers, but they kind of have discretion too. Like, yeah, this idiot never showed up to class, never turned anything in, but like if they're thinking he knows the material, like if he showed up, he could have gotten an A. Therefore, well maybe not an A in my case, but like we'll give him the C or the D to pass along because it's not an F. Like that kid there, he showed up every day and he's still an F. You know what I mean? There's like still a
Yeah.
discretion that they've got. So I think teachers in a big way, and to anyone out there, the teacher failed you and held you back. I really do think it was personal. Like the teacher either didn't like you or you just did something in that class that offended them to the point of like making a point of it, because it seems like every teacher, if like they could give you the D and let you pass, like that's what I kind of
Yeah.
learned from that experience.
Because it reflects
Yeah.
badly on the teacher too. If the teacher hasn't brought up the student's behavior and followed through with it, it bites the teacher in the ass.
Right. Well, maybe in senior year it's a little bit more lenient because you're not
A little more
passing them off
lax.
to like, yeah, but I know exactly what
Mhm.
you mean, that if you pass that seventh grader up to the eighth grader, like you got to see that eighth grade teacher in the halls, right? And they're like, what did you do to me? Like, why did you pass this kid on? They didn't vote. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, falling between the cracks is kind of what came up, with me. I have dyslexia. I still struggle with reading and comprehension, but in high school, well, all school grades, but high school, I showed up, I was quiet, so I was good, because I wasn't a rebellious loudmouth punk, but I was struggling, and there was several classes that I shouldn't have passed, but I showed up and I sat there and I just minded my business. But in a sense, I was still trying because I still showed up. So some of the teachers are like, but my parents, they weren't teachers, but they worked in the district. My mom was in the cafeteria and my dad worked in like the media center. It's not really the library, but it's connected to
Mhm.
it. So, and he was always recording and filming and editing any school events for the school. So it was like I wasn't in trouble with anything to say my mom was right down the hallway. And I never felt embarrassed for that, or I even just bragged about it. I said, "My mom's down the hallway. Want me to go get her?" I was like a weird, confident kid going, "Your mom's right there." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got the hookup in the cafeteria. You know those pizzas? I can get 2." No. I was like, but my learning struggles were what held me back to say falling between the cracks because the school did not have the resources that they bragged about that they could have to help kids when they're struggling. So it was part of that. What is the teacher going to do? Just give me that passing grade that I definitely didn't deserve. Especially in senior year, it was so much more relaxed. I had like 3 gym classes because that was my favorite subject besides, lunch hour. I had 3 different gym teachers. I had them all 4 years, but my senior year, I still had the credits. I was able to, like, I wanna say slack off, but I still, because I actually love showing up and being with my gym teachers, and there was 2 different male gym teachers and a female gym teacher, and they were my mentors, I wanna say. The clique with some staff people and passed, but if I didn't show up, but they saw me later in the hallway, they just kinda looked at me sideways because I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was still doing a little bit of the senior activities and just going like, I'm a good kid. What are you talking about?" So, to still pass other classes, but I had the weaknesses versus the strength and still just kind of who you know, how you know them. He just like going, "Oh my gosh, is everything kind of like a gatekeeping?" Because Joe and I were talking yesterday and he brought up going, "Babe, just so you know, the way you parent is gatekeeping." And I actually got offended. I was like, "No, it's not."
She did. She
I
did.
got I got really bothered by it, and I'm like, "Fine, you got 2 minutes to explain it to me."
I mean, gatekeeping's not inherently bad. If you lock your door at night, you're literally gatekeeping. It's just a smaller gate because you don't have a castle, but it's the same exact thing. It's having discernment. I think the where gatekeeping gets bad, it's almost like how white knighting gets bad, right? Like chivalry on its own right isn't necessarily a net negative for all of society, but when you see people like white knighting on behalf of somebody that they don't even know or they don't care about, or like people making stands for other people on things that they themselves don't care about, but they think, like, that's where it gets really weird with the gatekeeping, where it's like, I need to protect this thing from the outside horde because they can't be trusted. That's when it gets kind of strange. If it's gatekeeping at an individual level, that makes way more sense to me. It's just when it gets on like this broad general level. And and I,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I wanted to point out too on the teacher thing. Another thing that I realized way after the fact, and maybe like a cheat code. This is one of those things that you just don't tell kids because it's like telling them how to make a bomb or something. Like you can't give them this horrible information, but the teachers don't know that shit either. They don't know what they're talking about. They've got the teacher's manual, and there's a really good chance that the 2 weeks leading up to the first day that you're sitting in there is the first time they read that material too, and they're going through the back of the book like, this doesn't make any sense at all. How am I going to teach this? But the second that the kids show up, like, you can't break, you can't let them know, I don't know this
No.
either, guys, we're all in this together. Like, you'll never, because if a teacher were to say that, then what are they? Like, they lose all their authority. They basically don't have a job at that point, and they lose respect for the class. But that is
Yeah.
legitimately, and there's exceptions. There's the art teacher,
There.
there's the music teacher that's doing it forever. There might be the science teacher that's been sciencey his whole life, But when you start getting into like social studies and world history, some of those people might have just gotten bumped from another district because they already had too many science teachers, they already had too many music, and now it's like you're teaching world history, and they're thinking like, I don't know anything about world history, I don't care about world history. And I guess that's something that I never realized in school. Like, you would say it and you would know that the teachers had the teacher handbook version, but never in a million years did I actually think like, this person has no idea what the hell they're talking about right now. Like, I would think it, but it was actually true. I just didn't know it was how true it was.
Right. There was one teacher, I didn't have him personally, thankfully. There was one teacher, he was just done teaching, but he had to stick around for the last couple of years before he could retire.
Get that
And he
pension.
made every student miserable. He made them all one-on-one, just kind of like personal vendetta having again. Just so you walked in the room and like, this teacher sucks. He just has it out for me. But all the kids were saying it. You couldn't, I'm gonna say kiss ass or even get good grades. He didn't care. He was like, I need to make my life as fun as possible, but it wasn't even fun for him. He literally was just stone cold miserable to just exist.
If you
And I'm
want
like,
to ever get a
whatever.
really nasty insight, but if you go to the teachers subreddit, like on, the website Reddit, and go to the subreddit teachers, and it's basically just a venting ground, but it's a interesting way to get a pulse on, like, these are the minds that are shaping the next generation of our world, essentially, at least in this country. And reading about like how much they just hate kids, and they hate being teachers, and they hate the industry they're in, and they hate the topics they have to teach. And I realized that it's a little bit of a venting echo chamber. It's not representative of all teachers, but it definitely represents my majority experience in public school, that the
Same
teachers
for me.
literally hated us. Like, it wasn't just that they were apathetic or that they were tough love, like they actually hate
Yeah.
children. And for some reason,
Mhm.
I don't know, I think that there's something weird that attracts a lot of people to the teacher profession, that it's almost like if you want to be a teacher, you shouldn't be a teacher. Just like if you really want to be a cop, maybe you shouldn't be a cop. You know what I mean? If you really
Yeah.
want to be the president and think everyone should listen to what I have to say, I should be the most important person in the country. Like, maybe that person shouldn't get the thing that they want, and it should be someone that doesn't want that kind of heat. So that's
Yeah.
been my major impression from teachers.
Yeah. I worked in the school right after graduation and I was working as a classroom aide or the paraprofessional. And I kept getting asked, "Oh, you wanna be a teacher? So if you start with a part-time job," maybe I was going to college, and I said, "I don't wanna be a teacher. All they do is paperwork." And they looked at me like they were offended because it was a secretary or another teacher going, "Oh, you wanna be a teacher?" I said, "No, you don't get to work with the kids." And they're like they really had to think about it, but they're like, "But you don't make a salary." I said, "No, but I work with the kids. I know the kids, and I get to tell the teacher." 'Cause they have to ask me before they go into those parent-teacher meetings, "How does the child work? What's their weaknesses or the strengths?" And I was like, "This is something you should know," but they have so much paperwork. I worked with a really disorganized teacher, and I just could not stand her, but she had such a great heart. And then I worked with a teacher who was so organized, so on top of it, that they kept pulling her to be in meetings for students that were not on her caseload.
Yeah,
Then not
the
in her
what is
class,
it? The
she
punishment for
was
good work is
so
more work.
pissed. Yes, she was so I felt so bad for her, so no matter what, it was, like, helping them out to know the student that they should know, but, so to work with certain teachers that were there for the kids, they had so much paperwork to do. But I even say the other teachers of just going, they could balance it and do it, but they end up taking it out on the students sometimes. It's like what you mentioned is how I go, I have a learning struggle that makes that teacher have to do more work. And then they take it out on me like a resentment. It's a burden.
Right,
And I'm
because
sitting here going,
well, they know that by the end of that day, they have to get to the 1890s or whatever. And if they don't get to the 1890s and it's a Friday, well, now that screws up their whole lesson plan, because next week is when we start on, the 1900s. But if, Sally in the corner keeps asking too many questions, or we have to keep revisiting this, then it's like now the teacher is going to get reprimanded because she actually slowed down to try and get everyone. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
a no-win
It all
sort of
falls down.
situation.
Yeah, it all falls down on the teacher because the review is how are you teaching your kids? Do you keep up with the teacher has all that came out with Common Core crap that was in the Obama administration that got passed through. So much more got revealed of how much crap teachers actually have to deal with and can't talk about it as if it was Fight Club. And I was like, they were losing their jobs after they would get a unsatisfactory review. They wouldn't get their promotion. They wouldn't get tenure. This Common Core crap just screwed up the whole educational system where it was revealing of how much the teachers were going through, like good teachers, but it was also revealing that the system was always broken. This fucked it up and made it worse, and it needed to get better. And they were, I want to say, they were actually making good attempts and striving to get better, but then the 2019 crap hit and everybody was being homeschooled and it just got worse all over again because the parents were like, "Why am I teaching my kid?" Even with the computer sitting there and the teacher in the classroom, because it was just like the parents did not want to see and know what was going on, as I call it, behind the curtain revealing for not just how homeschool is set up, but how the teachers actually don't know jack shit. And the teachers, like you said, they're just going off of a playbook and they have all this paperwork to fill out. And the kids are doing work in class and then being sent home with work or just have so much more work. And the parents have always been pissed off that there's too much work for their child. They come home from work and they have to help their kid with this work. It was like always something that was just not making sense unless you had a Sheldon Cooper or Rory Gilmore type of child or student. They aren't just self-motivated, they get the material and they can do it independently, never asking too many questions unless they wanna talk about the subject in a discussion. You have, like, rare seeds of this genuine, like, genius giftedness with some of these
High
kids.
IQ.
Yeah, I wanna say
Which
high
to me
IQ, but
is even scary in a way, because the type of kids that do just like and I wasn't one of those kids. Like I had to go kicking and screaming to learn any of this stuff except for very specific subjects. But what, like, this is kind of sad in a very tragic way, but that kid, right, that just snaps immediately and understands it and knows what questions to ask and not ask and is like a go-getter. How much more amazing would the society be if those kids were identified and actually got to focus on shit that, like, they actually cared about and that actually mattered, and not just the same crap that's just kind of like one size fits all being applied. Because if they're that young and they're able to get passionate about dumb stuff that really doesn't matter that much, you know what I mean? Imagine if they had something else that they could be fostering. But so it's just as tragic as the kid that gets left behind because the teachers don't
mhm.
know how to
Yeah.
teach to them, even if they're capable. It's the same one, like the kid that can self teach themselves. They're being held back by the teachers. They're being held back by having these weird abstract limitations of like, no, you're in fourth grade. Like, there's might be some Doogie Housers out there that just didn't have the
Yeah,
opportunity where
yeah,
someone was like,
Doogie Howser.
holy hell, get this kid in the operating room. He could be doing brain surgery right now. There's probably thousands of those kids out there that just don't get identified, because it would imagine how much work that would be for a teacher to realize you've got a Doogie Howser in your class. Like, what do you do with them? It's probably easier just sweep them under the
Mhm.
rug. Maybe give them detention, you know what I mean? For like not paying
A
attention.
lot of them do, yeah, they end up getting punished for being too smart and,
Reading
they
ahead. I remember that when a teacher would get
oh
mad
my
at someone for reading ahead.
Oh my.
What a strange thing, right?
Mhm.
I mean, they do have what you would call those gifted classes, right? But even then, I think they're far and few between.
Yep,
That's
I
why
went
I
to
think a lot of
those.
them get lost.
They started as gifted and they changed it to challenge, and then there was a bunch of different names. But really all that happened in there is that you got to skip class and play like computer games. That was pretty much my entire experience in Gifted. Is instead of learning about the boring stuff that you might already know, like, here, do a puzzle for a little bit, play Carmen Sandiego for 3 hours. Like, that
Oh
was
my god.
Gifted.
Carmen Sandiego. I was over there sitting with Where's
Where
Waldo. That was my giftedness.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna act like I can't find him. I don't want to do more work. I wasn't like gifted, but it was also like my struggle was work harder. I got guilt tripped and shamed into I needed to work harder. I'm like, my eyes flutter and the letters and the numbers float and they
And that's
flip.
so not it too. That's like the worst approach for it. It's if anything, it's the
But
opposite. It's work
I go, these
easier.
so-called experts in their field, I was tested and it was one-on-one with a teacher, the teacher I knew, and doing these tests for like 2, 3 hours every other year. I think it was every other year to say that she still has dyslexia. She's still struggling, but they did say I had some gifts that I would see patterns a certain way and I was really good at it. But since I couldn't read to grade level, I wasn't good enough. I mean, they shame you into a corner. So then I'm like, well, I also didn't have the personality of a firecracker. I was like a drowned water lily, I guess. I just wasn't gonna make a ruckus. I was quiet. I was obedient. So just shove her along, push her along. We'll see how she does. If I actually fell off, because I remember crying to my parents several times. I can't read. And they're like, "You just don't try hard enough." And I'm like, "It's not like I'm setting the fucking bookshelves on fire that I'm just so rebellious and I can't read and I'm fighting it. It's I can't read. You guys know what's wrong with me and I'm not getting the support and the help to say, "Okay, you need to read for 10 minutes and then take a break. You need to read for 10 minutes and take a break because my eyes and however it would flicker. It's what our daughter has to say they knew what was going on, but they don't tell you.
I'm curious,
So,
did you ever, when you were going through that, did you ever come across, and I think I have the name wrong, pictographic books or pictogram books where like it's like the same as a regular written book, but instead of saying like the dog got an apple, it would literally have the word the and then like a little picture of a dog and then like a and then a picture of an apple where like most of the nouns are actually spelt out as like icons. You ever seen one of these before?
yeah.
Because one
Those
of those, like, those can prove that somebody can read, like, they actually
yeah,
can comprehend the story, they can go through it quickly, they can deduce logic from it, they understand, like, the operation of all the words, but when you're talking about dyslexia is almost like the shapes start to blend together and, like, move around and don't make sense because something in your brain is trying to convert this weird visual shape thing into a sound thing, and for some people it just doesn't like the translation between those two mediums doesn't make sense in a logical way, so it's almost like their brain fights against it and has
it
nothing to do
does.
with intelligence or knowledge. It's
Right.
literally like you're trying to because if you think about it, right, at like a caveman level, whatever you believe, but if even if we didn't come from monkeys, but at a certain level, even Adam and Eve, right, they didn't have to sit down in a room with pencils and paper and like translate things between shapes and sounds. So it's a very like unnatural process to go through. It's a miracle that it even has lasted this long and then it does what it does. But I mean, it's such an like an unnatural feeling that it shouldn't be surprising that it doesn't like make sense with everybody. It doesn't work with everybody.
Yeah, because I've been still getting familiar with how to describe it. Of how I when I'm talking with somebody, like right now, constantly talking with you or even with Joe all the time when we live together and we talk all the time. I talk with my kids. When I'm talking to somebody, I visualize every word. And if a word has a picture to go with it, it's always there. So like
Exactly.
the books you were describing, if I had a book with and the picture, there's a word to go with that picture, I can focus better on it. It's also
Because you
font
understand what
size, font
like, you know what it's
style.
talking about, and you can almost even
Yeah.
predict the thing it's gonna say, but when it's comes to the written word, yeah, that's like it's abstracted way beyond a graphic that represents the thing visually, because now it goes through, like, a few extra checks in your brain.
Yeah, there's a few extra like border checks.
Yeah.
So with what I love about with YouTube is that a lot of the videos have captions, closed caption button underneath it. And if I can click that, listen and watch, I can retain more information. Because otherwise, like reading, I have to reread it because it's just my eyes and the connection isn't lining up. So if I can listen and read, it seeps in better. If I'm listening to somebody that doesn't have a lot of visuals going on with the caption, I feel like it's very ADHD. I have to like fold laundry to listen to somebody because I have to do something of not just being busy with my hands, but to receive that information, to get in there and then think about it. Um, a lot of times it feels like I'm not a rolling stone that gathers moss. I'm definitely full of moss, but nothing absorbs. I'm just like just kind of falls off. It's just like, oh no, it's not sticking.
This is
Because I
actually well, this is a huge reason why I like the comic medium so much. It's for that exact reason you're just describing. Because even when it comes to like, if we get out of academia and just knowing just regular stories, but when it comes to conspiracy theories, it was so hard to convey some of like even the basics to someone that doesn't have any of the grounding to start with. And so much of it is abstract. It's about like this guy knew this guy, and well, in this year, and this was the intentions of all this things in operation. And the more abstract it gets with just dates and names and things, you just lose people immediately, even if they're interested in it. And I quickly started realizing that so many of the stories that I remembered the most was because I saw a movie or a TV adaptation, or there was like some kind of visual component that went with it. So I
Mhm.
just naturally was thinking like, well, the way that I can get myself to memorize some of these things and other people and explain it better would be in a visual form. So if I bring up JP Morgan, and he was known for having this big red bulbous rosacea nose that he absolutely didn't let anyone take pictures of him. But and there's because of that, there's not many pictures of him, and the ones that we do have are kind of black and white. So just like, well, if I can just get like a really graphic, characteristic version
Yeah.
of Morgan with this huge red schnoz and make that like a character in this universe, now it's almost like anytime I'm reading it or you just see a little silhouette in the background with a big red schnoz, you're like, oh, JP Morgan's involved with this. And that's just one cue out of many, many different ones. But now it's like, if I want to remember some story that I've told or a story that I've read, if it was in a comic, like I can remember what that panel looked like, and that panel then reminds me of all the little details. I don't have to remember words or names or the spelling of anything because I can kind of see it in progression. I know not everyone had, and I don't have like a photographic memory, but I'm definitely very visual.
Right.
So just like you, the
Yeah.
second that I can visualize the thing, you'll never have to explain it to me again because I can like it's like a machine that I can see working, and that thing goes down here, and oh, and if a cog gets caught, then that'll break the thing. So make sure that cog, like once you understand how it works in a visual way, then yeah, like I fully understand it. But even if I memorize it, and even if I know how to spell it and I can answer every question, if I can't visualize it, I don't think I really understand it.
Same, because I was gonna when you brought up seeing it in movies, TV shows, I love mythology, and I was really into Egypt, so, like, when The Mummy came out with Brandon Fraser, and there was some facts written into the storyline, now if I was talking to a friend, coworker, or somebody else, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I saw that in the movie, and they talked about it like this," but they read the book or they read books, I was shamed into not reading more into it besides taking, like, cliff notes,
Now
even
that's
cliff note
gatekeeping.
books.
There's a
Yes.
classic version
I
of
was
gatekeeping.
I was very into it, and I knew it, and I could talk about it, but they would shut me down because I didn't read a book, and I didn't know about it because they went to school, they went to college, they were the expertise in it, and I was sitting there watching the Hollywood movie of it, and they put little facts in there because I would
Yeah,
go
how
look
dare
it
you
up.
be interested in a thing that they should also be interested in? But the thing is that that process that they went through, it beat all of the fun and the enjoyment out of it. So I think at almost a
That's the key
subconscious
thing.
level, they say, "Oh, this freaking bumpkin is enjoying this. How dare you? Only us people that hate this
Exactly.
now are the ones that are allowed to enjoy it,
I was
but
just
we
gonna
won't."
say, because I would get excited and I would sound happy about it, and I wanted to talk to somebody else about it, but they were, like, very serious and down, and it was like, What broke? What's wrong with you?" And you're like, "I went to school for this. This is" like, it was serious, and I'm like,
That's the
"Fucker."
that's literally the problem. They went to school for it, and going to school for something, quite in my mind, hyperbolically, but quite literally, going to school for a subject involves beating all of your childlike wonder out of that
Mhm.
subject, almost by definition. Because if you go into something with amazement, like in today's like academia, amazement is like you're a rube. Oh, you don't understand how it works, so you believe in magic. So you're an
Yeah.
idiot. And only when there's no more magic and only when you're bored of this thing, then you understand it. It's such a again, it's like a toxic way to go about education is to beat the childlike wonder out of somebody and use that as the metric on like how far along they've come.
Yeah, because it's more about, authoritative, figure, and the obedience of multitudes,
What
of
and don't ask too many questions because 20 questions don't fit on a 4-answer Scantron for question number 7.
even if you only ask 1 or 2 questions and they're just like, so when I met Joe and I wasn't raised in a church setting, but I was looking for answers, and I met him, I was 26, 25, and he said he hadn't been to church in a while. He was raised up in a church-going family, and I said, "Well, what church did you go to? You wanna go back? It's been a year or 2," he said, for him to go and check it out and see how it fits, and
The
one of
People's
the
Temple, right?
churches
Is that where Joe came from? People's Temple?
was People's
Mm,
Temple.
no, it
Is
was
that
I was basically even down here in Florida, I was raised like Protestant charismatic.
non-denominational was
Michigan was
kind of
non-denominational.
Okay,
is
I
that
I
what
always
people
ask because I'm curious because I didn't even know there was other versions of Christianity until I got into the military. I thought everyone was Roman Catholic until that point. So I didn't think anyone was ever allowed to talk in church.
What?
Oh
Really?
geez.
Okay, so what's a Roman Catholic?
Just regular Catholic, but Roman Catholic is you believe the Pope, you believe the Vatican, you do all the saints, you do communion, drink the blood, eat the body, all of that stuff. But the other big part of it too is very serious. Don't ask questions. Don't laugh. Don't have a good time. You stand when you're told. You kneel when you're told. You literally don't make any noise whatsoever. All the singing is very much like droning. It's not because I remember in the military, I was a chaplain when I first joined, so I had to help officiate, like all not officiate, but I had to help run the services, not just for the Catholic mass, but for Protestant, Baptist. There was even like a Wiccan service there. I didn't get to do that one, but I remember the first time because I had friends that were other denominations and stuff, but I was never like, oh, you know what would be fun to just go to someone else's church on a Sunday. That was not at the top of my list. I didn't even want to go to my own church. But I remember going to my first Protestant mass, and I was like, these people are watching clips from Forrest Gump. What is going on
Yeah.
here? Like, this is not the church that I grew up in. And I was like, what have I been missing out on? I could have been watching Saturday morning cartoons in church instead of missing them to get yelled at about how naughty, my great 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 grandpa was back in olden times. So that it was eye opening to me to even see that some people are like dancing and having a good time and being loud. Like, holy hell. I can't even imagine now going into a Catholic mass and being loud for any reason unless people are singing. And even then, if you are like one of those ones that like, like the person that laughs the loudest in a sitcom and you're like, this asshole,
Yeah.
like no one wants to do that in Catholic mass.
So, have
I
you
would I
seen
would
Veggie
I would
Tales?
s- what?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
You've
Veggie
se
I
but it
didn't
was
grow
Tales.
up with
after?
it because is
Yeah.
that Catholic?
I
Is VeggieTales Catholic?
I don't
No.
I don't think
No.
so.
I didn't know about VeggieTales because I wasn't raised in a church setting at all, but the friends I made in high school, because they were theater kids mostly, but they also were robotics and computer geeks and nerds and emo. I was like a variety of people that I hung out with. I had a friend, like, he invited everybody over, and it was either Mighty Python and the Holy Grail or VeggieTales. And everybody, I was sitting there going, I didn't know what either
He's
one
in
of them
maximum
were.
security prison right now, by the way.
I didn't know either one of 'em what they were, just to hang out and watch something. So everybody's like, "Well, let's watch VeggieTales because it's a shorter film." And this was like the late 90s. And I was like, "What the fuck is," and I look at the cover of this VHS and I'm like, "It's a cartoon for kids." And they're like, "No, it's awesome. It's awesome." So they put it in and I'm watching the tomato and the cucumber and I'm just sitting there going, "What have I been missing my whole life? This is
Yeah.
hilarious." I'm like, and they're like, I'm like, "What is this?" They're like, "This is a Christian story, for kids." And I was like, "Christian? You mean like church going, Bible reading people?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "You got to watch," because I just didn't even know really who Jesus was. Like, I wasn't brought up in this thinking system, family system. I was like, Jesus is that painting my grandma has on the wall, and then, Christmas with baby Jesus. And I was like, I didn't know who it was, what these stories were. So I'm sitting there watching the tomato and the cucumber. What's it, Bob and Larry? And I was just so easily amused. I'm just sitting there learning about something that, I think I had just watched, or no, I think later that year on like AMC, like old time movies on the old cable box because it was late 90s. I ended up watching the 10 Commandments from, like, that
Charlton
was done in,
Heston.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, back in the, I was just sitting there, I was like, "Whoa, this is
That
from a
I
book?"
I think there might
This
be
is like,
something to, like, not introducing kids to any religion until they're a little bit older because it might be more it might have that, like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know this was this thing." Because, like, to me, like, being brought up and having to go to church and doing, like, the whole religious thing for a large portion of my
Mm.
youth until I was old enough to be like, "No, and I don't care if I'm grounded, like, I'm willing to die on this hill." That's kinda when it started. It was
right,
like, "If you're gonna be that much of a pain in the ass to drag the church, fine. You're grounded,
right.
but," and I would start to trade that in, like, "Fine, I'll be grounded for a week if I don't have to go." But I also think that what if it was this thing that, like, you didn't get to do until you were 12 or 13? You didn't get to go, and then only then, and I know that's not practical because a lot of families are like, "Oh, but what do you mean don't raise my kid? Don't bring him to church. Like the devils will get him so easily." But I also just think that it just like it makes you almost apathetic. It puts you at danger of being apathetic to something that could be helpful to some people in the long run.
Wait, it's really interesting you say that you mentioned that, I wanna say, because, as it's regarded as children, you have the age of innocence, right? So, like you're kinda getting at, I think, is why not wait till 12, 14, somewhere around there? Because how's the little devils gonna go after him and get him if they're the age of innocence anyway?
Well,
The cable
He
box.
really can't. Yeah, like he really can't, so to speak,
Well,
just
especially
after that.
now, right? Like,
Yeah.
because now it's almost like you have to provide some sort of a moral structure because you have got all of mass media fighting against that. So it's almost like even if you don't believe in Jesus at all, even if you're atheist, there might still be value in raising your kids Christian just so that they've got one other frame of reference versus whatever the hell is coming out of Hollywood on any given year.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kinda how
yeah.
I started to feel like, what we've been doing in the last couple of years. So, we started, well, I was gonna jump back to, we met when I was, like, 25. We started going to one of the churches that, there was, like, 2. We went to one of them because I felt more comfortable. We ended up going for months. We ended up getting married there, and um, by the time we have 2 children, we have a baby, and the second one came along, something was occurring in the church, called them out on it, and I got kicked out.
What
We
was
got kicked
occurring?
out.
Can you say, or is this
Just,
inside baseball?
it's like, well, the pastor's wife had passed away years before, and he got remarried. So the new pastor's wife, she was just um very materialistic. And the church wasn't really churching. So like to the Bible, it was very hypocritical of some of the things that they were doing during, I want to say not during service, like it was everybody's in the sanctuary and they're up there talking, but it's technically announcements beforehand, and it was just getting really materialistic and distracted. It was like, could almost call it like the Joel Osteen distracted. It's not anything to do with the Bible and teaching, or hey, everybody meet up in the gathering hall that's more casual in the back to say what I was processing and what was going. So I asked him about it too many times. It's like asking too many questions, but also being like, is this what church is about? Kind of pushing and pointing something out. But it wasn't just an elder, she was the pastor's wife. And so you're poking the bear at the top of the pyramid of power in a church, and it was a small church, so it was more noticeable
So
to say
what
if
does
you're
getting
gonna.
kicked out look like? Was it like a verbal "Don't come back next week"? Did they send a letter?
We left and we got and
Got a
Joe got the
phone
phone
call.
call from the pastor saying that what I did, because I didn't name names. I was just being very vague, but I was also like, I was just bothered and hurt. So I put something on Facebook, and only like 2 people from church knew about it, but it was concerning because I wasn't getting the answers. I was going to the horse's mouth. I was asking, trying to have a conversation, but getting redirected or gatekeeped and just dismissed. So I said something publicly, but I kept it very vague. I didn't drop any names. And then he gets a phone call from the pastor saying it was inappropriate, and it just the only word that stood out was, it was inappropriate and unnecessary. You are not welcome back because we cannot deal with that behavior. Me cannot deal with that behavior because I was trying to do it the right way. And then I took it to social media platform. This was 10 years ago,
Mm,
to say at least 10 years
yeah.
ago. Needless to say, within a year, controversy came out. More so, the pastor was money laundering. How do you say that? Like money laundering? Is it
Yeah,
Yeah, you got
he
it.
essentially.
would the money, it was the money, and they tucked tail and ran to Tennessee or something and left the church broke.
Oh, they
And this
embezzled money from the church.
embezzlement, yeah. I was like, money laundering.
Mm.
So, the elders we were still kind of, I would say, Facebook friends with them, kind of reached out and said, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" You just kind of like wanted to be like, "Do you want to come back to church?" But I know you kind of don't if you've already moved on, because we were already at a different church. But they were just kind of reaching out, going, "I just want to give you an update without giving you an update." That whatever you were doing that pissed them off and got kicked out was on the same, like, I was seeing something, but I didn't think it was that bad. Like, damn.
But they
And they were
knew it was
like,
that bad, which is why there was such
Yeah.
an
yeah,
emergent
like,
reaction to
get rid
that.
of what looks like the problem. Like, I was uncovering something. I was like, I just wanted to know why you're so obsessed talking about these materialistic viewpoints and living. It was very not biblical because I wasn't raised in the church, so I just didn't have that obedient mindset of just listen to what we tell you. Just listen to what we tell you, and if you have questions later, you can ask.
No, you
I
can't.
was
No, you
I mean,
can't. You
one of the
yeah.
first
They say
questions
that, but you can't really.
one one of the first questions I asked in getting to know the pastor getting to know us, because they already kind of knew Joe, but to get to know me, because we were dating, we were serious, I was like, I have a preschool question. What does the Bible say about dinosaurs? Because I loved Jurassic Park. I loved dinosaurs. Like I
You're like,
said,
get
grew up
out. You're not
very
welcome here
Hollywood.
anymore.
No, he was very much like, there was dinosaurs. I was like, okay, so I have this tattoo of a unicorn on my shoulder. Is that the devil? Is that not good either? Did they drown because they weren't allowed onto the ark, or did they just not get on the ark? I was asking about unicorns. I was asking about mythology, basically. And he was actually very open and very friendly at first, let's say in the beginning. And then things just shifted within a year. So I was like,
Did you
okay,
ask
we're
a certain
going.
question that made it shift?
Mm,
No, well, yeah, because I
mm,
noticed the behavior change, and I was
yeah.
asking about the change, the atmosphere. I was asking and talking to other people at the church. I was asking the elders. It was spread out over a year, but it was, hey, they're asking, wondering why, what's going on. So when you ask a question to somebody that didn't quite see it or was also noticing it, they don't feel alone. I didn't feel alone, that I wasn't the only am I the only one seeing this? Like, something's very different here, and it doesn't feel
This sounds
welcoming and
like
Yeah.
churchy.
a little like Box Saga.
To give a quick personal reference to the story, um, the pastor, when I went there as a youth into my young adults, he was not like that by any means. Like JJ mentioned, his wife passed away, and that, probably like any man, if you've been with your wife long enough, it's gonna suck. So, but the pastor I knew, that was what you would call that kind of big bear, gentle-hearted guy. That was him. That's who I grew up knowing. So when I ventured for me and JJ to go, his wife passed, remarried. That's when things started changing. And yes, I'm just gonna say it for what it is. It almost seemed like that sort of Jezebel spirit from the missus that
The new
was
wife.
she was ruling the house, the church, literally everything is what it looked like. Um, because it was like I couldn't even I don't even think I wanted to recognize it personally, because I was like, I couldn't even believe this is happening before my own eyes. I was just like, man.
Yeah,
But
'cause I was talking to him about it,
when they started
and
giving out trophies, during the announcements, no joke. They were like, here's a trophy for the individual that got the best bargain of the week. No
The
joke.
best
I was
bargain?
the bargain, like,
yeah,
whether it was clothes shopping or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
even
think
even I was sitting there going,
it was a treadmill.
this is not the man, this is not the church I grew up in. I'm like, even I was like, what is going on here? So when uh when JJ started uh calling it out, asking the questions, I didn't have anything to say or do except sit back and watch and just observe and go, I'm curious of how this is going to go, because even what I'm observing, I'm like, I don't think this is going to go very
He didn't
well
wanna believe
because,
because he didn't wanna believe it was, like,
yeah,
maybe it was just a fluke, maybe it was just a few weeks, it turned into months. That was in this year of me going, uh,
yeah,
this
some
seems
ain't,
very much like
some ain't right.
somebody's gonna come in and flip the tables over and smack some asses. I was like, I'm very new to this, and we had babies, so I was very distracted, tired, but I was still, like, looking at it going, "You're gonna stand up there at the altar and actually hold something up, like, and talk about bargain hunting and deals and hand out trophies," and these were, like, see, we're a young family, 10 years ago with babies, we're living on a tight budget, month to month of both of us working and trying to just, and we were living with my parents too, but money was tight. And these people are walking up there going, they've been working their whole lives. They're about ready to retire, and they're like, "Here's my trophy because I got a great deal on a treadmill." Not just any treadmill, mind you, like a Nordic Track 2nd edition something or other treadmill. I was like, this
Yeah,
seems
did they not give trophies out for off-brand bargains?
I
Did it have
know.
to be like a name
You're
brand
right.
bargain?
It's
I'm sitting there going, I went to the thrift store and I was able to find 5 because it used to be you had to find like 5
I
of
stole
the
this
same color
sweatshirt. Was that a
tags. I
good
stole the
deal?
sweatshirt.
right. Five
This
finger
fell off the
discount.
back of the
Free.
truck. My VCR fell off the back of the truck.
Yeah,
VCRs.
here's your trophy.
It's my
It was
VCR.
hilarious. You know what? I would say that his new wife was a wonderful gatekeeper. She did that terrifically. I mean, I mean, she held the keys, the locks to every door.
Well,
It was
that's the
just
interesting thing about being a gatekeeper is that you don't actually like it's almost like being a security guard at like some fancy museum or something, right? And that at a certain point, the security guard, no shade to security guards out there, but in this theoretical instance, there's some security guards out there that it's like, this is my museum. I know everything in like this is my knowledge. Like I know everything about this place. It's like, dude, you guard the door. And then imagine if there's somebody that isn't hired by the museum. That just stands outside the front door and as people walk by and he's just kind of like, keep moving it along, pal. This isn't for you. You know what I mean? And well, it's like now you're getting not paid to do the gatekeeping, but you're also convincing yourself that somehow you've got a
right.
monopoly on like all the knowledge that's behind this door and that somehow you're an authority on who gets to enter
Yeah.
this door and stuff.
Then
And
you
it's
get an
weird.
ego boost.
Well, and it's not just an ego boost, but almost at a certain point, there's people that are observed, like the masses, and they're like, "Oh wow, that guy must know something about what's behind that door because he seems to be deciding who gets entrance and who doesn't, even if it's
Yep.
not official." And if you keep that up long enough, that can just become your persona. Like you become an expert only in perception. Like if anyone would actually scratch the surface, they'd realize like, oh, you're just the guy that prevents other people from doing stuff. Like you're not even actually doing anything.
Yeah.
Yep. When I went from a student to working as a teacher aide, I was now staff. I went from a student to staff within just after graduating, and it messed with people or friends that I still had. I had friends that were in younger grades, and they're like, "Oh, cool, we got the inside scoop. Or I can't do anything for you. I'm not working with your teacher. I'm working with like special ed teachers." But I was in and out. I was later got a part-time job as a janitor to make more money. When school got out, I hung around as a part-time job where I did have all the keys and I was cleaning all the rooms. There's still nothing because everything's digital, so it's not like there's the filing cabinet and I can go change your grade for you if you pay me. I was like, but it was still like revealing to say what's behind the curtain, like in the Wizard of Oz of the doorkeeper. You can't come in, you don't have the password or the ruby slippers. And then when they did get to see Oz, he was just a man behind the curtain with smoke and mirrors and the fun house effects. But I ended up talking to people about what it was like for the teachers. I ended up telling people, I said, here's what's going on behind the scenes. And I get a 50-50 reaction to telling people because they had their own mindset of what it was like.
What was going
Narrow-minded
on with the teachers? What
viewpoint.
were you saying about it?
Depends on the teacher with if they wanted to talk about why they were such a bitch, and I might have known a little bit more personal stuff, was even saying, "You know how you go out in public and you're at your grocery store and all of a sudden you see your English teacher and you're just like, 'I'm not used to seeing them in the normal world.'"
You're not allowed to
Is
exist out here.
yeah. They would complain about their teachers and being like, "Well, if there was something about they're under review and what they're under review for." And it's more so because their personal life, they're going through a divorce. And it just makes people break down those walls of feeling like she's got it in for me. I said, "No, she's going through a lot of shit. And she's dealing with her own personal life is affecting her professional life, as if those two things were supposed to be separate." And when we separate so much and we look at somebody like they're a robot and they don't have feelings and they don't have other shit going on, and you want to walk into the classroom thinking that she's just a bitch because she's that's just her life mission. I'm like, no, she's going through a divorce. As to say it lightly, to say I don't like gossip about people, but when you have a personal agenda thinking that you're gonna take her on, I'm just gonna let you know that it's not personal. It's a case by case situation to say why we start judging people without enough information. And I looked at it going, I'm going to make a judgment call to make you not judge her without that much. You need to know it's not personal. She doesn't care about you in the sense of ruining your life because her life is falling apart. And how much that plays into when we look at somebody and we want to be like, enemy or just another person who's having a shitty day or a shitty life for like just there's aspects that do matter. And whether it's YouTube streets or personal life, a lot of people throw that back and forth and saying like it doesn't matter, don't take it so seriously. I heard that so much throughout life of it's not personal, it's just business. And I hate that quote. I hate that fucking line. I've heard it since I started working. It's not personal, it's just business. And a year ago, Joe and I were doing some research for Ybor City next to Tampa,
Mhm.
which led me into reading a book about the mafia. I've never seen a mafia movie. I never cared to see a mafia movie. But then I was reading a book about the
Oh, you had
mafia.
to see Goodfellas at
Oh
least.
my God. Nope.
It's a
No.
good movie, even outside of the mafia stuff, it's a good movie.
But that line came up. It's a line from one of the, um, not just the mafia movies, but it's like an actual quote from one of the mafia head honchos. It's not personal, it's just business. And I was like, it's from the fucking mafia and they use us as a business slogan everywhere, even in the schools, to tell me I'm just a classroom aide and we're getting budget cuts, we're getting pay freezes, we're losing our insurance, and they tell us it's not personal, it's just business. And you want me to come in and take care of somebody else's kid, but it's not personal, it's just business.
But
And I
I
was like,
guarantee you that you got at least one letter while you were there that talked about how, like, that whole school was a family and the district was a family, right? Like, it
oh
would be
yeah.
okay if at least everyone was consistent. Like, the day that you were hired, no one was like, "Welcome to the family. You're one of us now."
Oh
If
my
it was just
God.
like, "Welcome to the district. Remember, it's never personal, it's always business." It would at least it would be like, less of a like a fake fraudulent existence that you have to like put on this weird act. It was just like a constant
Yeah.
reminder. You check in, remember, you're just a number to us. Like
Well,
there would
here's the
actually be
best
something healthy
part.
about that.
That letter comes out in a year that everybody, because it was every department but the cafeteria was in a union. So everybody's department, like even the classroom aides, their contracts were up and it was all about family of support. And we're here for the kids
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
get
bet.
ready to make sacrifices and adjustments. I'm paraphrasing, but that impression. And then when budget cuts are made and people take a pay freeze and they have to wait 2 more years, the teachers had to wait for 10-year or retirement, and they were able to get it the under budget in budget. Who got the bonuses?
Admin,
The
always.
top administrators, more than one, and the word got out at how big those fucking bonuses were. 70,000 minimum, depending on what level of administration you were. I'm like, "We had to make budget cuts so you could get a bonus?" 70,000 pays for 2 paraprofessionals, classroom aides, and all you do that's the first department to get cut, is classroom aides. And
Well, where
then
do
it
you
was
think bonus
teachers
came
who
from? They
I'm
gotta
sitting
get
there
it from
going,
somewhere.
I'm ripping that curtain down and I'm burning this bitch up. I will talk to anybody and everybody as the years went on, and I found out the more insight because you don't find out at first. It's like leveling up, I guess, of information of I don't want to know, but if it's that bad, tell me because I will tell everybody else. Not like a whistleblower, but just telling everybody. I said it's because of budget cuts. It's because she couldn't retire yet. She can't retire. She has to wait 2 more years. She would have retired, not just she's, but the teachers and generals or even secretaries. So much shit was going down and people were being shifted around. One of the crazy thing was I got hired on the same day as one of my coworkers, and we had to do a lottery draw, and it was just me and her. So there was 10 numbers in a bowl, and we had to walk into the administrator's office. Whoever got the lowest number got that date for hire and got to stay in that building where they've been for the last 5 years, and the other person got bumped to, low seniority, just under me, and had to go to the other building. She was pissed 'cause she wanted to figure out how it was rigged. I said, "I didn't even wanna pick the number first," but the administrator was like he just pointed the bowl towards me, and I picked out a number, and I had the lower number. She was pissed. I mean, I had an enemy for life simply because I had the lower number. And wait 3 years, there was another shifting around. She's back, and I'm still her number 1 enemy, and I'm like, "God, do I just wanna quit and go, like, do something else?" I don't know, to pick up dog shit. I hate dealing with people who just they need an enemy, and you just become their enemy because it was, like, a good day, but everything went wrong simply because you existed, and I was like, "I
Well,
just don't wanna exist."
that's another part of the public school system that I remember hating so much was how arbitrary so much of it felt. And that's an inside baseball version between, teachers or in administration of literally just pick a number out of a hat and this will determine your future here. Like that level of being arbitrary echoes all the way throughout to where it's actually like, hey, we don't have like a social studies teacher. Great, what's the gym teacher doing? Like that same level of being arbitrary. And what if it was more like meritocracy based um where like the administrator, right, he gets a $70,000 bonus and it's just public. So now in the middle of the cafeteria, it's like, congratulations, Mr. So and so, on your $70,000 bonus. By the way, here's the salaries of all the other teachers and all the other people that are in this school and all the other administrators for all the kids to see. So then they can be like, Mr. So and so, like, what did you do to get free an extra $70,000 compared to, and then know all these people, because then it exposes the fact that it's not meritocracy based, that it's all arbitrary, and that's sort of what the school, in my opinion, that's what school's there to teach you. It's to teach you about life isn't fair. Like it's kind of
Oh, yeah.
it's made
Yeah,
to be a standard
life's
version
not fair, is it?
because the correct version in my utopian, like very naive mind, but like a better version of school would be almost like how taxes work. And I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but it's almost like you show up on day one and it's like you need to earn $100 or you're not graduating and you're going to be stuck here forever. And that's it. And that's all they tell you. And now it's up to you to figure out how you can earn $100. Well, if you're good at numbers, maybe you do it that way. If you can cook, maybe you do it that way. If you can play music really well and get people to pay you $1 to play them a song, you get it that way. But for some people, they're not good at any of the things that school cares about doing, but humans are resourceful enough that you could figure out something that like people would want to give you $1 for. And I'm putting it in terms of economics just for convenience sake, but it's like, great, you don't fit into the 7 thing. You don't do the art, music, science, whatever, but maybe you can come up with some other really cool idea or something that doesn't fit into this mold. And as long as you can do that and you can still get your $100, then you get to graduate to the next level. And then it turns education more into like, how can I survive and adapt in this world and be dynamic versus can I memorize this thing along with the other 30 kids in this class memorizing this thing? Some people, they'll be able to remember that years later and use it to their advantage. Most of the other people is just like occupying space in their brain and taking it up and wasting it, that it could have been something else.
It's like
Yeah,
occupying
which is really it's really intriguing because what is it, about grade 11? I think they really start hammering in your head, especially senior year. That's a given. But I think in your junior year, they start hammering in your head. You got to know what you want to do, man. What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to be? What are you going to this? What are you going to that? And like you pointed out, I would venture to say that most individuals are like, I don't have a clue because everything that you're trying to show me, like you pointed out, I'm not going to make money with. So you're asking me a question that you can't even deliver. So
Yeah,
how
it's
would
not
they
about
know?
survival.
They're
You know
not
It's not
what
gonna
the
about
know.
the worst thing that I didn't do this intentionally, but I realize it now. But the teachers would be like, "So what do you want to do when you're out of here?" And I remember thinking like, "Well, what did you want to do?" You know what I mean? But it was because in my mind it was like teaching couldn't have been somebody's first plan, right? Like that was
Option, right? That's
the third or the fourth safety maybe. So
right?
I realize in retrospect how much that question might have stung some of them. Like, oh, before you were beaten down by the world and you gave up on your dreams. What were your dreams? You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
Exactly.
yeah.
Because a lot of
It seems to me that school to me seems like the worst conveyor belt ever. They only have like 3 or 4 conveyor belts to put you down, and if you don't fit the mold, they're like, I you don't go down one of these conveyor belts, I don't know what to do with you." It's
You're the package that fell off at the UPS plant. It's like under the conveyor belt, so it's not technically lost, and you can't really get insurance claimed on it. It's just there forever. And that's basically No
yeah,
Child Left
because
Behind. It's like No Child Left Behind. They just get lost under the conveyor belt every once in a while.
then you realize, oh, if I'm gonna be left behind, if I'm gonna fall off the back of the truck or get stuck, or just like you become the Divergent. Like when the Divergent movies came out, I felt like they were really singling out the character person that does struggle, kind of like Hunger Games. They don't want that position, like you pointed out earlier. Somebody that doesn't want that position. They don't want to stand out, but they need to be the best version of themselves. There's no class for that. And the way school, or even if your family life sucks, you do go through such like the fire of sticking with, I need to be the best person that I can be, the best version of myself. Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And you have to go off the beaten path. And then you get so much more, how dare you? What are you doing? You're crazy. Just do what everybody else is doing. And I did get that from my parents. They're like, don't rock the boat. They're like those sayings, they're like warnings. And I was like, what do you mean rock a boat? I was very literal. I didn't understand things that were just like nudge me in the elbow to shut up, like, or nudge me in the elbow, put your elbow into my rib cage to tell me to shut up, that I'm like, I should be seen and not heard. When you're a kid to then you're an adult. I said, I'm an individual person trying to figure this world out, and I keep getting shot down. Like, I'm too free thinking, I'm too imaginary, I'm too much for people. And now I've finding quotes, or finding a little bit of a small tribe of people who are always been told, "You're too much. You need to calm down." That's your and it's like, no, there's a few of us out there where I'm like, that's why I feel like I guess I feel like I'm 20 years old again. I get to rediscover and find the confidence, or just finding my niche of going out there. And I'm like, I'm 41 years old and I'm starting all over again. Every day I'm starting over again. And I tell Joe, we have 2 individuals that are our children, but they're individuals, and we are raising them to be ready to go out into this world. And I am terrified of just saying that statement right now, because I wasn't ready. My parents didn't help me get ready. The school system, the
Have
world
you
just wants
dropped Life
to.
Isn't Fair on them yet?
I think it came up this week.
Yeah.
It actually was coming
That's
up
a
this
really
week.
rough one, man, because it's so true, but it's also like such a thing that I
Yeah.
hated to hear. But yeah, it's
Oh yeah.
that one
My
probably
mom
stings coming out if you had to say it to
My
somebody.
mom told me all the time, "Well, it's not fair. Just deal with it and move on." I was like, "How do you deal with it? What's the process of actually dealing with it?" Because I don't get it, and I would get stuck there. The
Mm.
whole deal with it and move on. I'm like, "No, there's a process. There's a process of being whiny and crying and then building yourself up, but actually having support going through the process." I would say support, or just even, this is how I deal with it, right? Because I was always second guessing myself with that doubt, because if I was always doing something wrong and you would tell me I was doing it wrong, you never told me when I was doing shit right. So
Because
I had
that's
just,
the expectation, that's the standard.
yeah. because they didn't know what doing it right was. And I'm like, well, if we're all doing it wrong, then how are we still all alive? How are we all not fired and losing in bankruptcy? Like, if we're all doing it wrong, because it's all you hear is the negative. All you hear is like the gatekeeping of you can't stop, hold up, wait, nope, nope. No, this is like a lot of nopes. So when we're raising our kids who have their own struggles of learning difficulties and society norms. I'm sitting here going, oh, I'm relearning it while raising them times 10 because we homeschool and we talk to our kids. Well, we talk to our kids like they are individuals. We don't talk down to them. We talk to them. I told Joe, we need to talk to them the way we wish we were talked to. We would need to explain things to them, even when we get triggered and say, "Well, life's not fair, is it?" And we always quote that from Lion King, and they think it's funny, but we talk about it and say it's realistic. Is the truth and the humor of quoting Squar, Scar playing with the mouse, say, "Life's not fair, is it?" And then he eats it, and it's like, then he spits it out. But and it's like relating to, again, movies, whether it's a cartoon in the storyline of going, "This is how I understand it, and there's nothing wrong with it," to then dealing with people out in the world of going, "There's more of us out there. We were just told to shut up and sit down, and we're not crazy rebellious. We do just think outside the box to even solve simple problems because you have somebody standing there going, 'That's not how you do things.'" And I'm like, "There's more than one way to do it." And it just freaks them out. I think it's like the confidence of just saying there's more than one way to do it, even if you don't have it figured out. "You can't do that." I said, "I'm 41 years old. I'm unemployed. I take care of my kids because being a housewife or a homemaker isn't allowed. It's just not allowed these days. It's looked down upon." I'm like, "Before I was born, it was looked down upon, and that's just, what I ended up being. So no matter what I do it wrong." And that's the pushback, society. And then you got some people going, "Well, okay then." And then some people going, "No, that's not allowed. You should do better. You should have more." I'm like, "I don't want more." And then that freaks them out. I'm like, "How can you not want more?" I said, "We live in a world that's very materialistic, so they can control you." And I say stuff, and they're like, and then I don't have anybody talking to me for months because I say stuff like that. It just rocks their world. And I'm like, I put a splinter in their head, and I always resort to quoting the Matrix and feeling like Morpheus. And I'm like, I get to go sit on the stairs. No, wait, I'm in Florida. I'm going to go sit on the beach and think about what I did. And I'm just,
There's a good analogy for that that always comes to my mind. I don't think I've ever even mentioned this before, but like that idea of like always wanting more and like, what do you mean you don't want more in this society? It's to me, it's almost like going to the arcade. Like as a younger kid, like I went to the arcade to play the games and even like skee ball, right? Like I loved playing that
love
stupid
skee
skee ball. That
ball.
was like my favorite thing,
Yeah.
even more than like all the video games. I love the video games, but skee ball was like my go-to. But there were people there that would like just playing for the tickets and they would like figure out ways to cheat. And there was this one place that it was just unsupervised in a dark corner. And if you wanted to, you could just sit there and just throw the balls in
Dark
the
corner.
500 nonstop and just like max out the skee ball and the tickets would come out. And I remember there was like groups of kids that I started categorizing where it was like, why are you here? In the skee ball place, like this is the coolest game here, but you're not even playing it, you're just gaming it for the tickets. And some people, they really think that the whole point of going to the arcade is just to get as many tickets as they can get so they can go and trade it in for some piece of garbage that you could, like, if you had spent that much time mowing the lawn, you could have got like 10 of those stupid stuffed bears or the little plastic ninja, whatever the hell the thing was that you spent all this time. And not only that, but you had no fun doing it unless for some reason like you get fun out of just earning the most tickets out of anyone. And if that's what you find fun, that's fine. But that
Yep.
also is like not the reason the arcade's there. Like if everyone that went to the arcade did that exact thing, then there wouldn't be any games there. It would just be you just show up and you just like hit a button and you get tickets and because that the ticket thing was really originally to make you feel accomplished. Like you got this big high score, and now there's a reward aside from just getting your name on the top. And it was like a cherry on top. It wasn't the reason, but over time, it was almost like
I know.
people only went there. And it was also too like the Mortal Kombat came out. There were some people that went there that would just like know how to do cheat moves or something, and they would just do it for like the clout to get their name on the top of all the lists, but that didn't necessarily have fun doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had more fun with skee ball. I was just trying to aim to get it in the hole. I didn't care what the points were. I didn't care about the tickets. I just enjoyed the simple, fun skill of trying to, it's like bowling, but the bowling with the always ripped my nails off. So I enjoyed skee ball because it didn't, the balls weren't as heavy. And it was just like, or even like baseball, because I used to do baseball as a kid. And at one point I was up for being pitcher. And that is a skill to have because you don't want to hit anybody and you want them to strike out. But even if they did hit the ball, it was whatever because there was just something simple in it. Now, when Street Fighter came out, I was the person sitting there going, I don't know all the cues to rule book or whatever. I was hitting the buttons like just super fast and
Button
crazy and I would
mashing.
win. I would win every time. And it pissed everybody off. And I say, fine, I won't play anymore because I wasn't playing by the rules. I was like, well, I was kind of bored and I just can't do the buttons. I wasn't good at Mario either. I was good at Tetris. I did Tetris a lot and stuff, but
Too high stress in those later levels, man. Like it's
yeah.
for me, it stops being fun around level 8, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not having fun now. Now I almost feel like I'm in trouble or I'm
Oh,
like avoiding like immediate death or something.
I could get to level
That's
12
funny.
See that it
and then
just
I
hearing you say that you're at level 12 stresses me out.
oh, that was
Just
decades ago. I can't do it now. I can't even get past level 4 now. But decades ago, I was like, I get up to level 12, and then all of a sudden that music gets faster and more intense, and I actually start to sweat. But I was like, level 12, wow.
I played
And then,
the new one recently, and it's even worse because it'll like do it to you in chunk. It's almost like one of those treadmill programs where it like gets really really hard and then it'll get easy and then it gets really hard again and it just keeps going. It's not like a linear process. Like the newer Tetris, you'll get like 7 in and all of a sudden it's like bam, here's a level 12, and then they'll knock you back down to a 4 and then a 7 and then a 4 again and then
oh
bam, here's
no,
another 12. So like you never
that's
really
too
see it
much.
coming.
I probably would have liked it as a younger kid. I can't do that's too much stress for me now. I'm like, I can barely handle Bejeweled.
Yeah.
That was like
oh
Tetris. I'm sitting here
jeez,
going like, and that
Bejeweled.
because I play a few rounds and then it stops and it wants to tell me I have a prize. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to keep playing. I don't have that reward system like that. I play until I'm like tired. And like my eyes are strained out and I played until how many levels I got like leveled up or something. I just have that quirkiness about me where I'm like, hey, I don't play the reward system. It's kind of like we're realizing I'm hard to control and be manipulated in that
What do you
aspect
mean
that
you
a
don't want
lot
the
of
carrot?
people
We don't have any other programs that don't involve a carrot. What do we do
I
when we have
know.
fun?
They don't know what to do with
And
that,
then
and I'm
someone's
like,
like, "Did you
"Oh,
try the stick?" And you're like, I don't know. Like she didn't respond to the stick either. What do we
no, I'll
do?"
take the stick, you're just not gonna like what I do with it."
Yeah.
You'll regret giving me the stick.
Right.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I know we brought it up a little bit before about the the mafia and the books and stuff like that. Um, since you definitely like books, I'm pretty sure. I was just gonna show with you the book that we were reading for the Ybor City.
Cigar City Mafia. Interesting.
Yes, this is purely based out of Tampa. Essentially, it does branch off to I think Chicago a little
Well,
bit,
it's
maybe New
Ybor.
York,
It's
but
it's
this is
Ybor
mainly
City,
for Ybor
and
and
it's right
Tampa.
next to Tampa, and it has to do we were looking into the tunnels. There's a tunnel system under Ybor that, was kinda uncovered accidentally a few years ago, and so a lot of that was it's probably with smuggling. The tunnels were right next to the bay for, shipping and receiving. And there had to be tunnels because if you were unloading something that you didn't want documented, I'm like, okay, that's a good cover story. Sure, why not? And it led into
Yeah.
the mafia, the original mafia. I don't think it was Traffica. I think it was another guy before him.
There was Trafficante, I believe,
Trafficanda. I always say
and
Traffica.
oh my gosh,
Yeah, it goes to
there was like
Miami, it goes
3.
to Chicago, Detroit, New York,
Yeah, there was like 3, but it's not a
Vegas,
very
baby.
big book, but you definitely like reading.
It
You will
wasn't
enjoy this
boring.
one.
It
It
was
was
hard
not
because it
boring.
has a lot of the names and dates, but when I get stuck, I'll go to the back of the book and I read the chapters backwards. I don't read backwards. I'll read the last chapter first and I'll go backwards. I have to skip around to find the information. And because I started reading it from the front and I'm just like, what? I need to know how this ends. I already kind of knew
Yeah.
because, they're all, most of them are arrested,
This-
but I just needed to know how the book was set up to see how it flows. And I was like, oh, and there is a few pictures in there in the middle of the book. It wasn't boring. It wasn't the most exciting read. Like if you think it's gonna be like Harry Potter, thrill seeking read, it's not. But
All
information.
stars, they all go to a
No.
magical mafia castle, and they all
I
learn
know.
how to make magical mafia potions.
Oh, that would be funny. That
There's
would be
actually an interesting premise in there. If there was like a criminal version of the Harry Potter castle, like where like all like a juvenile detention facility for Harry Potter kids.
oh
Like they all
yeah.
go there to like learn how to make poisons and like hot wire cars or something. I don't know.
Well, I guess it's like the character that's in the Fantastic Beast storyline, I forget all their names, but, there is the dark side, I'll just call it the dark side, like the Force. But to say, yeah, juvenile detention, Hogwarts Center,
Yeah, like what were all the kids at Hogwarts that asked too many questions or that
it's where
like
yeah, asked too many questions because
yeah.
Malfoy wasn't sent there, and he was a little punk. Like,
But Malfoy played by the rules. If anything, he worked with the system to weaponize the system against the other people that were bucking up against the system. You know, that were
plus
like looking around like,
yeah.
"Hey, this doesn't make sense. What do you mean I can't do this? Why is that off limits?"
Mhm.
And Malfoy
His,
would be the one that would like tattle.
his dad guided him, and also the family name was well respected and well known, even though everybody knew that that was, like, the mafia kinda family.
Yeah, he's like
You
Skull and
know
Bones, right? Like everyone knows that you guys are up to something nasty, but you also kind of like founded the whole damn thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You
that
had a comment. Sorry, babe.
Ybor City deep dive we did, it's a couple hours long for good reason because, basically what I did is we went to, like, old, I wanna say newspaper, but, like, CBS, ABC, the news stations. We saw, uh, old clippings from interviews of, people finding the tunnels. So what I did is I decided to track one of them down because he was an actual architect himself. I was like, "Ooh, that's fascinating." So I went ahead, I kind of tracked him down, and essentially we got an interview with him and in person, and it's all in the Ybor City Tunnel, and we went
We
over
had
all the
lunch.
information. It was amazing. I mean,
It
there
was
is
cool.
so much information packed in that Ybor City deep dive. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Because he owned one of the buildings that the tunnel connected to, and he didn't know about it either. And he's an
No.
architectural expert that's been working in Ybor and around Florida for decades. So it was really cool and to just have a conversation with this I want to say elderly old guy full of information because he's retired, but they wanted to buy the building from him like it was a cover up. Hey, by the way, we'll just take this off your hands for you. And he was like, Nah, I'm good. I'm an
Nope.
architect. I'm not worried about some hole in the
Some
basement that came out of
tunnels.
nowhere. I want to know.
Yeah.
He even told us that he grabbed a flashlight and walked as far as he could until he got creeped out because it just kept going on and on and
Wow.
on. So, yeah, he's like, this was, I don't know, 10 years ago
Did he
when
find what was at the end of
some
that tunnel?
it made a Y. It was like a fork in the road.
Mhm.
He was like, "I'm done. I'm not going any further." Because it's like a safety issue sometimes if it's gonna collapse or not. Because it got exposed because of heavy rain and flooding
Mm.
that the tunnel
Yeah.
was in the wall of the basement, and they never did anything in the basement.
They
And
didn't make it with
Ybor
OSHA standards.
yeah, Ybor is slightly elevated, so it's not like water level, so but it just got flooded and it pulled away from they pulled the dirt away from the wall or something, and it just exposed. So then everybody's involved. They go, "What's the tunnel for?" They're like, "Oh, we gotta cover this up. We gotta hush hush. It's not a big deal. It'll bring on urban explorers, and then they'll just get, they'll get it's all danger. They'll get stuck or something bad will happen."
I mean, charge $100 and sign a waiver to get in. Now turn it into a business enterprise.
I know. I know, right? There's
Well,
always
the
something.
something that JJ found out that I was like, "Wait, what?" was the water towers were multifaceted, multi-purposed. And I was like, "Come again?" She actually found out that the towers were used for the tunnel digging themselves. And again, in that Ebor thing, it's got the diagrams, all of that. I was like, holy crap, you got to be kidding me.
Well, they take a lot of the towers down of
Yeah, they've taken a lot of the towers down, and essentially, I think you probably know the area, Tampa, kind of okay, and how the river the Hillsborough River runs around it, Tampa, essentially. We basically found that the tunnel system is in Ybor, goes all the way out to the north west corridor where there's a house where they found the tunnel system going under the river that keeps going northwest, and it goes northeast as well. The whole freaking thing is intricate. It's ridiculous how massive that tunnel system is.
There's a lot of towers that are multi-purpose to say they end up calling them water towers, but they don't use them as water towers anymore. And what we see as water towers today, and you look at the water tower back then, it still doesn't make any sense. And then they were
No.
saying that, oh, this water tower was a pump system because they were going to build a resort right there. But then there was a hurricane in the 30s and it got flooded and washed out. So a lot of money lost, and the tower is still there, but it doesn't look like a water tower. It doesn't look like, but it's outdated by 100 years. So however you want to make it look like, and I'm like, it looks like an old world observation tower, a lookout tower, or even the sighting towers. They did use towers because to old school system wise, before lasers, way, way before lasers, to make sure the tunnel systems from miles away were lined up straight. You had to build a tower, line it up straight. Old school masonry kind of with the chalk string. Because my grandpa used to lay foundations for houses. He would just lay the bricks. And I remember seeing the chalk string kind of technique, different angles. I was like, damn, it's so simple and so smart. And then to fall into one thing leads to another of a connection of going,
You don't even need
that's
to know the
not a
numbers. You don't it's just like it's so like self-contained way of building something that if you just show someone how to do the chalk string, they don't really ever even need like a calculator.
and that's the kind of math I like.
Yeah.
I used to think I should have gotten into like the family business, but my grandpa was a shady guy. So when my brother tried working for him, I'm 5 years younger than my brother. My brother tried working for him and my grandpa never paid him what he promised to pay him
Mhm.
because of the money was always a weak spot with my grandpa of he needed to have more. He always had an excuse not to pay and cheat somebody out. And that's what my mom grew up with, because he would show up with, here's the present for the summer or something. Like, she told me she's the oldest of 4. They all got new bikes. Always buffer. They all got new bikes, and then within a week, they were gone. And they're like, "Did somebody steal them?" He doesn't outright come and tell them, "Oh, I sold them because I wanted the money back." He doesn't come out tell them. They thought they were stolen. They thought they lost him. Eventually, she's like, "No." He eventually goes, "No, I just turned them back in, or I sold them." He's like flipping them or something. He'll give something and then take it away. And that's what she grew up with as a dad, much less how she didn't want to raise her kids. But kind of like my mom also told me why she didn't take us to church was, 1, she didn't want to be the only parent getting 3 kids ready to go to church because my dad wasn't interested in going. But she said, what happened to the church her grandma went to? So my great grandmother, the church was a church, Nazarene church.
What's
I think it
that?
was, yeah. So the
Oh,
Church
the
of
Church of
Jesus,
Nazarene.
it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Nazarene. It's a title. It's a denomination of just
What's their weird
traditional.
quirk? They all
Yeah,
have something weird.
they all have something, but it was a traditional going, laid back. I think it was from the 60s. So it was the decade that my mom kind of went to church and remembers seeing the church fall apart because there was people coming in to dictate how the church needed to be run so that it could possibly, I don't know, make money or something. She just remembers the pastor wasn't in charge, the elders weren't in charge anymore, and these people came in and
It's
they
like
were
a
just
venture capitalist coming onto a new
yeah.
company and like
And
firing
she
all the old
goes,
guard.
yeah. And this was the 60s into the 70s, and she goes, "I just remember the church falling apart and everybody, like the members of the church, they left. Everybody felt like it was a shady deal, like something was going on." And the pastor was still there because it was all family oriented. It was good until it wasn't. It was fine until these outsiders came in and they changed everything and the church fell apart and they took the money and ran. And so her upbringing of seeing what a church was, she just wasn't interested in church, and how if Jesus or God was to protect their people and they got misused and manipulated and they lost money, to say that's how our system that we live in works on is money, yet they were left with nothing. So very much thinking, I'm like, "Mom, if you had to go through a Job situation, you would definitely curse God."
Yeah.
It's like, you're
I
like,
think
"This
I think that
isn't."
the whole point of that story is most people would.
Yeah, and saying, well, I was going to church with him and we had young babies," and she starts kind of reflecting and telling me, if I'm asking, "Why weren't we raised in church? Why didn't we go?" And then she tells me a little bit, like, she starts to open up, and I can tell it's some honesty, but she's still bitter or just hesitant to really tell me more about how she really feels about it. Um, she was basically manipulated and played this gatekeeping kind of gaslit situation with her own dad, and then the church and her, just growing up. She got not the short end of the stick, but she really had to just take care of herself. Because even when she got a job at McDonald's, was her first job, and she had to pay for her own braces. She was 16 years old. She had to pay for her own braces,
Wow.
pay and buy her own car. Her dad at 16 years old, her dad, my grandpa, looks at her and says, "Oh, so you can start paying the bills around here." My mom went all like lawyer on his ass. She says, "No, legally, by law, I don't have to pay you shit till I'm 18 and graduated." She had to, like, stand up for herself in such a way with that's her dad, this is her family structure. There's some other shady stories about grandpa that it just blows my mind. to
This
say
reminds
this.
me a little of like John D. Rockefeller's dad. I think it was William. Why have you ever read about Wild Bill
Oh,
Rockefeller before?
Not read, but heard.
He, well, so he's got a famous quote that I'm gonna butcher, but to paraphrase it, it's something like, "I never missed an opportunity to cheat my kids out of something," and it was more of like he was convincing
Good.
himself. I think it was just a personality trait. Like some people don't
Mm.
feel alive unless they're actively taking advantage of people around them. Otherwise, they feel like they're the one being taken advantage of. It's a nasty, vicious cycle, probably like abuse, but it's on like a different level. But he said this, and that
Yeah.
there was even reports that John D. Rockefeller and William Rockefeller Jr., they grew up wearing burlap sacks despite their dad having all this money because he was like a snake oil salesman and he sold petroleum based products and stuff. But he said the reason he did it is
Nice.
because he wanted to keep his kids sharp. But it was like, man, what a weird way to grow up for like your
A little
own
too
dad
harsh.
to be constantly trying to screw you out of stuff and steal stuff from you and pit you against each other
Yeah.
and gaslight you, all in the name of toughening you up.
Mm.
It reminds me of, I think I was watching one of the Frankenstein movies. It was
I hope it
Dr.
was Young
Frankenstein
Frankenstein.
and who was his assistant? Like an Eeyore? Is his name Eeyore?
Igor with a G.
Igor.
Gore, yeah.
Igor, I remember hearing this something that Dr. Frankenstein said to Igor, and Igor said, "Get them before they get you." And I just sat there and was like, "So do you need to watch your back, Mr. Frankenstein? Because he's helping you, but he also knows everything that you do." I was sitting there like, "Is this gonna get more interesting?" I was like, and then like nothing happened because he was still loyal to Dr. Frankenstein and everything
There was
going
a,
on. But I was
church
like,
version of that one. I can't. It was probably like a Mad magazine or a Crack magazine or something. But I remember reading it, and it had the same impact on me. But it quote was "Do unto others before they do unto you," which I
yeah.
think is like the Christian version is "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," like treat people. But this idea, and
Yeah.
it resonated more with me because it felt more like the real world experience that I was used to, is way more about do unto others before they do unto you than it is treat everyone like you'd want to be treated.
And you know what? I think that's probably part of the paradigm difference between book smarts and street smarts, right? Because there is a pretty big difference between the two. And because you have the very well educated individuals out there, but boy, when you put them in the streets, and
Yeah, we'll
they'll get eaten up.
take somebody that has been in academia the entire lives. They've got like 2 or 3 PhDs, and they specialize exclusively in, say, like utopian societies and utopian ideals, and platonic, concepts and platonic solids. And then you put them in the middle of like, I don't want to call out any particular. Let's say Tampa, right? You put them right in the middle of like the worst part of
Yeah.
Tampa. I mean that like philosophical utopian, fancy pants word libraries only get you so far until somebody punches you. And that's always kind
Yeah.
of like struck me, is that even if you got the entire world, like literally if we got every single person on the entire planet to just agree to never be violent, throw out your guns, you're never going to make a fist, then all that happens is the first person that decides to make a fist, like they're running things now. Like they are literally king of the world. If no one else is willing to throw a punch, then they get to rule the world, because it's like whoever is willing to
Exactly.
do the dirtiest, worst thing and keep doing it and
Yeah.
not care that other people know they're doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's something I've been, it's because our daughter is the older one, and I tell you, there's what I'm
She's
trying to
14.
raise her, what I'm trying to kind of raise her to that certain extent is
Because it's either education or elimination.
We like that certain lines that are just like, I've been using double-edged sword or two-way street or catch-22, understanding so many statements in the last couple months, going, that goes both ways, because I don't want to catch my myself in a situation where I sound like it's an absolute, but also like if somebody does catch something I say and they're like, "Hey, it goes both ways." And I'm like, "Ooh, I find it so enlightening right now in the moment of going, how does this play out?" There's no absolute. I haven't found an absolute anywhere of certain statements to live by, certain statements to go by. And even today, I was telling, or no, last night, I told Joe, I was like, in the moment of going, I love being in the shower. I'm just getting all refreshed and I don't talk to anybody and I can't listen to anything. And my thoughts came about because I'm so focused on gatekeeping. We're going to talk about gatekeeping. I've never used the word gatekeeping so much as like looking into it. How do we want to talk about it? How am I going to talk about it? And we're talking about, well, we're usually kind of talking about religion slash mythical, but I kept thinking about school, the academia, uh, family dynamics, family life. And I'm like, gatekeeping is just fucking everywhere. And I was like, we live in a world of gatekeeping. That's what this system is,
Yeah.
gatekeeping. It's all because he pointed me to the sense of my type of parenting is more gatekeeping. And I was like, no, it's not. I was so offended to say it was gatekeeping. I was like, no,
Uh,
it's not. It's called parenting. She's not ready. They're not ready to look at it. It's all
if you
demilitarized.
get
I was like
really
so
offended, it
defensive.
means that part of it you're
I did.
identifying with,
Oh,
and
I
that's what
did
makes
for
it
a
mad.
minute.
Yeah,
I was saying
really.
because of their developmental stage, they're not ready to have all of the information or certain information. Because I said, as a parent, I know their sensitivity level
I mean,
because I'm not letting them sit there and watch Lord of the Rings
I
yet,
mean,
even though
did
I
you
know
at any
they'll enjoy
point
it.
did you ever put up a baby gate in your house? You ever
Several.
well, gatekeepers, literally, by
Yeah.
definition.
I know, and I was like, "I'm offended right now." I got a little, like, sarcastically triggered because I caught myself getting like, "I'm offended," and then I have to laugh about it going, "Oh, wait a minute. That's
Are we
okay.
the
Wait,
baddies?
my god. Oh, are we the baddies?"
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Now I always do this because my main homie, the realist McCoy's in the house. I always have to
Oh.
give him his shout out. Um, Paranoid American, have you heard of Realist McCoy?
I don't know if I have. A shout out to Realist McCoy. Shout out to Maya Cherie too, who I see is
Yes,
in here.
Yeah, she's in here.
yes.
So
The
someone I
Realist
think it was
She
McCoy,
Secret
he's
Society Good Guys, but someone I think Janie was like, if you've got a show and Maya Cherie's not a moderator, do you even have a show?
She's everywhere.
And I saw
Indeed.
I
Jay Dreamers gave you a shout out
Oh.
in that video too.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
So we were checking out your channel, the last couple of days. So I was telling him, I said, "Go get a feel for Tom, see, because I watched some of your stuff 6 months ago or so, and it was because Sherry pointed me in that direction of, hey, you might like some of this other stuff, because I really did like your occult Disney talk about like reveal, and I also feel like some of the paranoid feeling, the heavy topics come up and I start feeling the heaviness of going, this is too much. It feels too dark or sometimes creepy. And I just kind of get bombarded and or just distracted with going, I need to take a break from research or looking and listening to it because it's like I get it. And then it's like it's just too much sometimes. I'm still processing it. And then I jumped back into it because you and Joe said, "Hey, yeah, let's do some gatekeeping. Let's go talk about gatekeeping." So I'm over there watching or looking at your channel, and I'm like, "Wow, he's got a lot more things going on over here." I ended up watching your Mormon Monday, your
Oh
first.
yeah, with Heidi Love,
Oh yeah,
Unfiltered
I'm
Ryan.
sitting there. I'm halfway through it, and I get this. I want to say research squirrel. I get distracted, and I started listening to this ex Mormon. Her name's Alyssa something. And I pulled up one of her videos and I'm kind of going back and forth. And I'm like, the information is, I want to say parallel. It matches. Not like I was confirming it because I knew a little bit about like the Mormon religion and how off and weird it is. but it was so cool to listen to. This information is very much gatekeeping, heavily just because what's her name? I think I have it pulled up. Alyssa Granfell. Let me just share screen.
Is she a current Mormon or an ex-Mormon?
Ex-Mormon. She's got tattoos and she wears makeup and she drinks coffee. Where am I going? This one. So I get to this part where she starts talking about, I don't have that up. How she was she was born into it, raised into, and this thinking, and she even calls it like when I was very heavily Mormon supported, and she did a mission, her mission, I think called missionary. No, that's mission.
Yeah, she went. If you go on a mission as a Mormon, that's when you get
And
sent somewhere. That's like the highest level you can attain in the church before you start actually progressing through the church.
yeah, she ended up leaving with her husband and her left the church when they were 24, I think. So she has a whole channel and she's been talking about everything. And she wrote a book first.
Hmm.
And it put her on like the blacklist with the Mormons or something. And she's very much a lot of attention for talking about everything. And I thought it was really cool. And this one part in this video is she gets into telling how, like, basically describing how brainwashed she is to think about Joseph Smith and how
Mm.
him and his followers were persecuted because of their mission that they were on, I guess, to listen
Um,
to.
I was gonna say, can you hit the box to make it bigger? That way it's more. Yeah, there we go.
I always forget to do that. To say, I have it queued up if you just want to listen to it for like a minute.
Well, yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, I'm happy to. I love the topic of Mormonism. People sometimes think that that means that like I'm a Mormon or I'm trying to. I'm not. I'm not interested in becoming a Mormon. I'm just fascinated with knowing more about it.
It's like because you're on the outside looking in and you want to go, why does none of this match up with my reality? And it's like you got to decode it.
Well, I also love that it's very American. Like it's Mormonism is
yeah.
uniquely something that only exists in America, and it's one of the only
I never thought
American-only
about that,
religions.
but that's
That and
what like
Scientology. Those are like the only 2 that we
yeah.
kinda have, maybe Church of Satan if you wanna throw it in there. But I mean, like, those are uniquely American religions that don't exist. I mean, they didn't exist outside of America.
Yeah, I never thought about that when I was listening to you and Heidi talk about it. I was like, it's only American? It's so weird how a statement is said, and I was like, oh, what else is American besides certain foods, if that? And it's funny. So I think it's queued up.
Growing up, that the
Is that too quiet?
That is pretty quiet.
You can crank it.
Mormons got kicked
Yeah,
out
crank
of
it.
Join the Saints. Now, I knew growing up that the Mormons got kicked out of everywhere they went, and they suffered a ton of religious persecution. And this was always posed to me very much as Joseph Smith was such a righteous prophet, and he was speaking so much truth that his prophecies, even just the fact that he taught that God, the Holy Ghost, and Jesus Christ were 3 separate beings, that his teachings are the reason why the Mormons receive so much religious persecution. That is the narrative I was spoon-fed since I was a little kid. That
was the main part. I wanted not to repeat what she was saying, but for her to say it for herself, that she was spoon-fed as a kid, as to say any religion, any upbringing, or to say if you're spoon-fed something. And I was sitting there going, I really wasn't spoon-fed anything but treat others with respect so that you get treated with respect. Treat others as you want to be treated. Because I didn't know who Jesus was. I didn't know any character of a religion following. It was the police are in charge if they're on the scene, EMS, firefighters, teachers, the principal. Like there was a pyramid
Just
authority,
so the secular religion.
parents, I guess, just secular free for all of like people in general. of a parent, whoever the parent was around, like if it's your kid or like
This
your
is
friend.
the faith in the structure of authority and the hierarchy of authority, but which is a faith in itself, the same way that you have faith that the teacher knows the stuff that they're teaching, and maybe you don't want to know that they've got no idea what the hell they're doing, because that would just rock your reality too much. It would be too much of a distraction for you to get through the end of that semester. With education being the example, but it fits every walk of life.
Yeah, because it was crazy. I had in grade school, I had a best friend that after they moved away, we still stayed in touch. And if I went there for the weekend to visit, they weren't a Jehovah's Witness before, but they became one.
Mm.
And being more secular or just hippie-ish, I want to call it, I never had the like a proper dress to wear because if I stayed with her the weekend, I had to go to the Kingdom Hall, I think it's called, with her Sunday morning. And I always had to wear one of her mom's dress. Luckily, I was taller and it kind of fit, but I didn't have it's not a sundress, it's just a very simple, I guess, sundress something with dress shoes. There was a standard, and I had no idea what the hell was going on. I just thought it was boring as hell. But there was a lot of that who's in charge, and there was cliques. Even within this small Christian like church, something or other, there was cliques. Besides the men, unless you were married, you didn't socialize with the opposite sex. Under like teenagers, certain age. Besides kids, like under 10, kids under 10 have no idea what's going on. And then if you're, I guess, 12 to 18, you had to women over here, boys over there. I'm sitting there just bored as hell. Sometimes they did a picnic afterwards at somebody's house, and I was just like, I do not fit here, and I can tell, and nobody can talk to me because I'm an outsider. Even though I dress the part, barely, nobody would talk to me. And my friend was talking to some of the kids that she knew, and her mom was doing the mom parent socializing thing, and her mom was there. So it was more of why she started to go with this Jehovah's Witness thing was because of the grandma. She fell into it. And I'm sitting there going, I started learning bits and pieces later on of going, there's only a select few of like what that number is, 144,000. I'm like, haven't humans been around a couple thousand years and you're only going to select what, one or two from every 1,000 years? And you guys still faithfully follow something that you don't even get to get into heaven? You don't even get to sit outside the gate. What are you guys doing? And I
Okay,
get looked
that's why
at like,
Mormonism is an improvement, wherever most people get to go, but some people have to sit in the nosebleeds, and some people get like backstage passes, but everyone gets to go in a way.
yeah, I was like, you don't even get to sit by the gate. And I started thinking about this with gatekeeping, and I was like, dang, how
Yeah.
do you get
Well,
sucked
I
into
mean, look
that?
at Christianity as a whole, or at least Roman Catholicism. You believe that you die, you go up and you see Saint Peter first, and then he's there at the gate, and he gets to decide whether you get to heaven or hell. So it's like you get to feel the cloud beneath your feet. You get to see it, but then he's like, nope, and then fall to hell, I
Oh
guess, at
my
that point.
god. It
But like the
reminds
whole
me
the
of
whole religion has just been about the ultimate gatekeeping.
did you ever see the movie Rapapalooza?
It sounds so
It's
familiar, but I'm not.
it's from like 10
Oh,
years ago. The chick from Twilight's in there, not Kristen Stewart, but the other chick. What is her name? She does Pitch Perfect.
what is it called? Wreckapalooza?
Rappa.
Rap.
It's a play on Rapture. Rapapalooza. I can't remember her name.
Anna Kendrick, probably.
And Kendrick. I keep thinking Kendrick,
Kendrick.
the rapper. The rapper's name is Kendrick or something, and I'm like, is that her name? But she's not the rapper. So in
She's in a beef
Rappa,
with Drake right now, I think.
in that movie, there's a scene where her mom got to go to the pearly gates, and there was a long, long line, and she got rejected and it got thrown back to Earth, and she's crying, and she won't stop crying. She was like, I was right there. I got raptured. I was standing in line. I was getting massaged. I was getting pampered and treated. And then and he opened the book and he said, no. I'm paraphrasing, but it's a really funny movie to
This
say
thing's
at
even
the
worse
time.
because you get to actually see what you're missing out on.
And so because she got sent back to the house, and the daughter's there, the husband's there, and her daughter, was played by Anna, is happy to see her, but her mom can't stop crying because she doesn't give a shit to be back on Earth seeing her husband, let alone, but even her own child. And she's like, I was right there.
Okay,
It's like,
okay. Here we go. Let's just
oh, did you find it?
The rapture. Oh, he's so dumb.
What is that?
I think it's raining blood.
Oh, well, that's great. Now it's all smeared.
Ow! You little fucker! Be careful of the rains, Clark!
Whatever.
I will destroy you.
Well, I'm so scared right now.
We were screwed.
My name is Beast.
He's the Antichrist, Dad.
He's the Antichrist. He's the Antichrist.
He's not as bad as everybody says.
Oh, come on! Not Orlando!
Satan.
It does seem
Orlando.
Yeah, that's
Orlando.
what's going to happen, apparently. It's going to be locked up for 1,000 years.
By God.
Yes.
Why for just 1,000 years? Why not forever? You have him. Why would you let him go?
Why couldn't we do this?
Do what? Lock him up? This is what you gotta do. You go with this beast guy, you have a great night out, and at the end, knife him. She should knife him. Yeah, I just said that. She should grab him.
These are from him. Carnations. Now it's time for romance.
Let her go, Antichrist!
I killed Jimmy Neutron. Oh, damn mercy. I'm a sinner with a good heart and leave a trail to find my way.
Where's that?
It's coming right at us.
Ben, wait!
Oh my.
You barbecued my son.
I panicked. I laser beamed him. I beamed Jesus. I'm so sorry.
That.
The rapture show's on! This guy's on a toilet! Oh. I saw it coming and I still laughed.
Oh my God.
Is that sacrilege with having Hollywood shooting Jesus out of the sky? It
That's not the
almost
only
feels
one.
a little bit.
That's not the only one. These two
I
movies
forgot
came
about
out in
that
the
one.
same year, and we rented them from Blockbuster. I remember walking through Blockbuster, and they were on the shelf, and we were like, let's just pick two random whatever movies. That was one of them. And do you remember The Day After? It was not The Day After. This Is the End. And it has like the small cast member people from like, oh my God, what was that movie with McLovin in it? I forget what that movie is.
Super bad.
Super Bad. Like most of the kids from Super Bad are in this movie with Seth Rogen and James Franco, I think, and Jonah Hill, and Rihanna even has a little cameo in it. And This Is the End. That's what it's called. This Is the End.
I got you. Here we go. We're going.
Is this our favorite? This is our favorite scene.
Jonah Hill? Jonah? Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill is no more.
Demon?
Yes.
That's not good. That's not good.
Jay, you fool.
I say unto thee, the power of Christ compels you.
Oh, does it? Does it compel me?
The power of Christ compels you.
Does it, Jay?
The power of Christ compels
Is
you.
the power of Christ compelling me? Is that what's happening?
The power of Christ compels you.
Guess what? It's not that compelling.
I'm sitting there watching this.
Oh my God.
I'm just like, I'm new to this. Is like 2010. Did it say 2010? So we're like a year and a half married. I have one baby, one on the way. We're like I'm new to all this stuff, so I still find it more funny than he does because he was raised in church and I wasn't. But we're just kind of like going back and forth, easy conversation. I'm like, "Is that offensive? Is that blasphemy?" I'm asking him so many questions of just over and over again. "Is that offensive? Is that blasphemy?" But then later down the line, because that's sitting in our subconscious and we're going through life. We've been kicked out of church. We can't find a church because we're church hopping for a while. How do we raise our kids? What's right? What's wrong besides our moral compass? And we're just sitting there starting to laugh at everything that doesn't make sense anymore before the age of 40. And I'm like, resorting to some of these movies is going, does it compel me? Does the Bible compel me? Is it compelling? Am I doing something wrong? I just started making so many sarcastic remarks and thinking, overthinking, and I was like, "You know what? Let's just let it go. We're just gonna let it go. We're gonna be like Elsa right now. We're just gonna fucking let it go, and we'll see what happens." I have no idea how to make sense of everything. I grew up secular. He grew up in a Christian setting, and we're both sitting here going, "We don't know what the fuck to do." Nothing makes sense anymore. So when you walk away and you let it go, it actually started to just reveal itself. So it was like Harry Potter with the reveal. It's like,
Yeah, I would
okay.
say at first, again, because of my upbringing, at first I was offended. I'm like, yes, actually, it should compel you.
Oh,
Yes, it
he
should.
would get triggered. He still kinda does get triggered. He just and I said, "Oh, that's that Christian boy. You just gotta defend it." I said well, I'm teasing like that, but I said, "You're getting kind of, like, triggered," as we just use that word a lot. I was saying, "Does it trigger you? Does it compel you?" I was like,
Well,
"Why do you feel that way? Why did you
well,
jump
what
to say
what
defensively?"
has kind of helped me in a way, I think, is even being brought up under that biblical uh knowledge, I guess, is that even here in humanity, I kind of go, okay, so certain individuals have certain skills. Like some are good at football, some are good at baseball, some are good at soccer. So everybody has a good skill set. So I kind of go, okay, maybe if I apply that to my biblical upbringing, go, okay, so just because, you know, you might be able to say certain words or, phrases or whatever, it doesn't mean it's going to work because I kind of go, well, you know what? Maybe if that really were to happen, maybe the demon would look back at you, go laugh and go, sorry, you're not compelling me at all right now, dude. So I had to like in my own sense go, you know what? I think that is probable that could happen. If you don't have the skill set to deal with certain things, then yeah, you're gonna get mocked and go, yeah, nope, not working.
Those
I have
movies
a
aren't for the faint of heart. I just wanna caution, those movies are not for the faint of heart. Like, it's comedy,
I
but
if you're
there's a
easily
lot of
offended, maybe don't.
vulgarity in there too. Like
I have a question that I usually like to ask people, when I have them on, like, my show, and the question
oh,
is
is that the 10
basically
questions?
yeah,
Like,
it's
at the
one of
end?
them, yeah.
Oh, I was like,
And
"Ooh, he's gonna ask questions."
well, one of the questions, and I'll ask both of you this one, but it's one of my favorite ones because it gets at a much deeper point. But if when I went and I ordered the top 3 best-selling How to Summon a Demon manuals on Amazon, and then I read the whole things back to back, I followed all the little, "Try this yourself." I did all those things. Like, would I actually be able to summon a demon if I had never done anything bad? I never thought about summoning a demon before. I just on a Friday night I ordered them. They show up on Saturday morning, and I do it all that night. Like, will I actually be able to summon a demon? But another version of that would be like you could order Anton LaVey's, like the Satanic Bible, right? You could order that and you could read it start to end. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be automatically compelled to it just because you read it, but like, are you going to go to hell because you read it? Like, did you say the words in your head? What if you said them all out loud? Okay, now what if you took that book and you said it in the parking lot of your church, but you're not necessarily on grounds yet. Okay, now let's say you're in church and you read it out. Like, at any point, are you going to hell for any of that? Are you like doing evil things, or are you just reading a book and saying things that are in a book? And it's an open-ended question, because I don't think there's a right answer to it, but it reveals where some people's lines are, where it's like, oh yeah, no, I can trust myself with reading the book. It's like, okay, well then why can't you go and read it in the middle of church outside? Like, let's say it's empty. Like, let's say the church is empty at least. Like, is that so offensive that God or whoever would be like, I can't believe you brought that book in there? Like, that's it. You're out of here.
Well, again, I honestly, I think a lot of it, like you said, I think it's circumstantial depending on, you know, what's going on. But right off the cuff, I kind of go, well, it how do I word it? The heart and the soul is different from the mind to a certain extent. They're connected, yes. However, gaining knowledge and learning from other material is traditionally not a bad thing, because if you don't learn from other material, well, then you become ignorant, and sometimes ignorant is not bliss, because you're not going to know how to handle different situations if you'd never gathered any knowledge on it. So in that regard, I would say, is it okay to read certain books? I would say, yeah, as long as your gate, your heart is gate kept, right? Gatekeeping, from allowing that to possibly filter in and change your soul and your, that
But
part.
wouldn't that imply that you were already damaged goods before the book came along? Like, if you reading a book can
Right.
change you for the worse and make you a bad person, I'd almost argue that you were the bad person originally, and now you're just using the book as like your revelation.
Trying to get
You
them
know,
tips.
in that regard, I would venture to say, technically, you knew I was going to talk, didn't you?
You
It
buffered, yeah.
buffered. I would venture to say that, even in that biblical sense of we're all humans, so we're all screwed. Even in a biblical sense, we're all humans, so therefore, yeah, we're technically all kind of screwed right from the get-go.
Well,
So
and to answer the question, I do think that there's probably been somebody that was happy-go-lucky, normal, relatively normal, whatever that would mean, and then comes across like some Nietzsche and just like nihilism in general, and just black pills themselves into a spiral. Like, that can happen just as much as someone
yeah,
that's on a spiral can read some
that's
religious text or philosophical and get themselves. So reading
yes,
something can change you, but I just don't know if it's like a
that's where I was
demon
gonna
thing.
that's where I was gonna go with it. It's a in a weird way, not weird way, but it's kinda like children, our daughter. We're not gonna let her see or hear certain things, especially depending on what's visually being there. Why? Because we're guarding her innocence, if you will, to certain stuff, because we don't know what she can and cannot handle. Even adults, I would say, there's adults that don't necessarily know. I mean, we have a better aspect, but we don't know exactly what we can and cannot handle. So again, if there's some individuals, right? Like, even say military, they've been through all the gun blazing, so to speak, and they've probably done some tours and this and that. So they're going to have experience in that. You put a fresh newbie who never went through boot camp and you just put him out there to the desert. That's not going to go well. He has no clue what's going
Hell,
on, and
just
or he
put them
might not be
under a
able to
normal
handle
day
it.
of pressure,
Right.
without going through boot camp, let alone in
But
like a war environment.
yeah, but boot camp to me, or to I would say an average citizen, they would look at boot camp as yes, it's an initiation period, but it's to kind of weed out who can and who cannot possibly handle this type of stress. If you literally cannot handle it and you're washed out, then it's not necessarily a, well, you're just a terrible human being. No, it just lets you know that, well, you can't handle this type of environment, so be wary of it. So if someone's washed out and they know they can't handle it, you're not going to call them up the day of war and go, "Hey, why don't you come out, join us?" That's the last one you're going to call. So in that respect, I look at that in the same avenue and go, well, we have to know to an extent what we can and cannot handle, and others. So I mean, we're not going to know what others can and can't handle, but I think that's what I'm getting at. It's certain people can handle certain things, or others can't handle horror films. There's some people who go into horror films and oh my gato, it's they freak out and everything, while the next person is laughing their head off, going, "That's hilarious." So
That's a really good example of like the horror movies that, because I'm not really big into gore, but if I understand how the practical effects work, and I know going in, like how they're making it look so gross, like whether they use latex and if they got a pump going or if it's CGI and stuff, like knowing that, now I can watch like the goriest scene as long as I'm looking at it in like, oh, I wonder, is there a guy off to the side here with like a manual pump? And I wonder how they got that pigment. If I'm in that mode, then none of it's gross. But if I find myself like buying into the movie and losing myself in it, and then some weird gore comes up, like, like I don't want to say I can't handle it, but out of the way that I think of it is that out of the endless amounts of media that we could possibly consume, you wouldn't even be able to listen to every song on the planet in like 30 lifetimes. There's just so much of it, right? So and just like you were talking about your kids and deciding what kind of media they consume, it's part of it maybe gatekeeping. You could also say curating if you wanted to like loosen it up a little bit, because in one aspect, it's imagine if to simplify it, like you're raising a painter, right? And there's an infinite number of colors that you can keep teaching your kids and showing them how to paint with these colors. And if you just give them all shades of gray and black forever, then it's like you're kind of stunting them in a way, because now you're forcing them to learn how to just paint with this like limited palette versus introducing a whole bunch of different, and there's different analogies you can go with that, but it's the same thing as like, you can show your kid a horror movie, but also there are literally an infinite number of movies you can show your kid and a very finite amount of time that we're on the earth. So would you rather show them like Human Centipede or Land Before Time? Like they're, like there's a very real
Land Before Time is a horror movie?
I mean,
Did
I would say so. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Well, it could be.
Land Before Time with Littlefoot?
Yeah, it's the whole premise is based on your parents are dead and you have to basically find your way to this promised land. But if you even look in retrospect, it was all fruitless. They were all going to die anyways. They were all going to time. It's a very existential, terrible movie.
But
I never considered that to be a horror movie. The kids have seen that one.
Yeah.
Same with Dinosaur. The Disney Dinosaur movie is a horror movie.
We've
if you look
seen that
at it,
one,
everybody dies constantly.
Well, I liked your analogy with the painter, because our 14-year-old daughter is, I want to say she's an artist, and I never critique her artistry. I said, the more you do it, the more you'll find your style. And she would come to me and say, it doesn't look good. Buffering, sorry. I tell her, if you don't like it, then you keep practicing until you do like what you see, what you're doing. I said, more so, I think she does like to color, but she would tell me she gets overwhelmed because she has like ADHD. And I said, if you're overwhelmed, I want to tell you what I do. I like all the colors, rainbow colors and any colors combined that you can get. We like all the colors. So pick your 3 favorite colors you want to start with, or only work with. It's just pick 3 and go from there. And I kind of tell her, if they're all the same kind of shade of pink and you really can't tell the difference, pick 1 from each group of a color wheel. Like, what's the opposite? So maybe 4 colors, but at least 3. So the primary colors are technically 3. And I just find ways to ease into it. So with finding ways to ease into it, when you ask that question, to say someone walks in with I want to paraphrase it, a satanic book in the middle to a Christian church where there's people there or not, let's say there are people there and they're freaking out going, how dare they bring in like the Satan's Bible into this church, this holy, holy place. And I was like, what makes it holy? The people. Okay, so what are they I ask questions in a perspective viewpoint of why would they do that? What are they trying to figure out? What are they trying to find? A lot of people come with the judgmental and damnation, and I get that from more so people who are brought up in any kind of church setting, unless you stick out like a sore thumb because you're the black sheep, where I'm walking around going, "Are they dangerous?" To ask questions is dangerous. So let alone to walk in with basically the book is a challenging statement or question. And
Well, also,
everybody's
like,
freaking out.
are they defending God on their behalf? Like, who are you? Like, do you think
I
that
know, "Who are you?"
if
And
it
I'm just
weren't
like,
for you, Mrs. Sally or whoever is standing here being offended on God's behalf, like God would be up there
yeah.
crying right now. Like, thank God you're here to defend
I
his honor.
honestly I did ask Joe the question years ago. I said, "So if Satan asked for forgiveness, would he get it?" And he was like, "Nobody's ever said something like that, not to his knowledge, of if Satan, the devil, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, if he asked for forgiveness, would God give it to him? If we all fall short as humans, but we don't really know about the unknown in that spiritual realm." I remember kind of hearing it and I was like, "So would forgiveness be given to him?" And a lot of people, I wanna say, even the pastor, I might have asked him and he goes, "No." And I was like, "Why?" And he really didn't have an answer because I said, "Why?"
I
Because I'm
think
new to this. I'm new to this game, so I'm asking some hard questions after, "Are
yeah.
dinosaurs in the Bible?" And then I was like, "Is Lucifer gonna be forgiven?"
I mean, I
I
think
would
that he would, but it would also he would cease to be Satan at that exact moment because the whole concept, as my understanding, the whole concept of Satan is an adversary. So if you're no longer the
right.
adversary, you're no longer the Satan, and you no longer have sin because sin is something without God. So if at some point Satan, the king of sin, asks for forgiveness, that means he has now submitted to God. So he's no longer has sin anymore, and he's no longer Satan. But that also poses an even harder question. It's like, okay, let's say that a theoretical Satan asks God for forgiveness and he gets it and he goes back into heaven. Is there just like all the murderers of the world? Do they just automatically they're good people now? I feel like there's like he would leave a gap, right? There'd be a power gap in hell, and someone would have to fill that gap, like almost South Park style, where like Saddam Hussein like stepped in and he became,
Oh my god.
Satan. But like even if Satan left, there would have to be a new Satan. There'd have to be a new person
Well,
that denied God.
have you ever seen the show Lucifer?
I'm familiar with it because it's based on a Vertigo comic, I believe, but I haven't seen it yet.
So it started on, I think it was the channel FX, and then it went to Netflix, and they got to be more raunchy with it. But the last 2 seasons really bends that stereotype, I'm gonna call it stereotype, against Lucifer being the devil and whether or not, um, he could be forgiven, and also then if God retired, who's gonna be in charge on that spectrum of going, is it because they bring in a character, Gabriel, I wanna say Michael, a couple of the angels, but mostly it revolves around Lucifer, and there it is a really funny show, but it's very I kept telling Joe, I said, "It's a very Catholic theme, storyline and I keep getting buffered, and bending some of the norms of even how dare you ask that question? How dare this show would be very offensive to I guess some hardcore.
Well, there's no
My
shortage on
understanding.
people being offended by things.
I know.
It's
I'm
surprising how
sitting there
easily people are offended by things that like would just not even register on my radar.
because with Joe's upbringing being like, I want to call it non-denominational, but kind of, it was Catholic system is more. There's something to it that's not with the Christianity versions of I want to call them simplified denominations. But none of the show like Lucifer really bothered Joe. He's sitting there going, "That doesn't bother me, but that's going to bother some Catholics." And I would
I mean,
look at him.
there's different flavors of Catholics, but like Catholics are so used to also being on the weird end of like the judgment scale for a lot of other Christians, because a lot of Christians consider Catholics almost like antithetical to Christianity because of what's perceived as idol worship and some of the other horrible things that go on in the Catholic Church. But I always, growing up within it, to me now in retrospect and being able to compare it to the other religions and services that I've seen, it's almost like a lawyer's version of Christianity, where like it's almost like you have to cite like a legal precedent, and because this guy proved this thing in the year 17 or 1100 or whatever, that's how this works. Which kind of dovetails into my fascination with Mormonism, because Mormonism is almost the opposite in this way, where it's almost like every year they get together and they do a powwow and they're like, so guys, how are we feeling about these 10 commandments? Did we kick the third one out? Do we bring a new one in? Do we reinterpret what adultery means? Maybe adultery doesn't mean what we thought it did. And there's always like this like ever evolving open, and it's not open to everybody, obviously. It's like very gate kept too, but in the Catholic Church, it's almost just like, oh no, we don't question that. That was determined in the year 700. Like, don't worry, that's been thought out for you. Here's the precedent. It's been in the books for thousands of years, so don't even question that anymore. And that kind of like, it's almost like built up through the like the legal system, where we maybe started with the Bill of Rights and we started with like the Constitution, but now it's like built upon, PhD manual on top of PhD manual, and there's just like an infinite number of pages. And that was always my understanding of the Catholic Church, is that like you don't have a say in who God is or how to worship him or any of that. Like it's told to you because of thousands of years of smarter people that are better than you.
That are
Yeah,
better
that
than
that
you. That's
that was
the
something that always kind of
pedestal.
threw me off, is growing up, under the denomination I did, and non-denomination. We were basically told that verse of no one goes to the Father except through me. So
Mhm.
basically, um, we were essentially told to pray to Jesus, and through him it'll get to the Father. So anything that we had going on across the board,
Oh
all we
my
had
god,
to
is
do
that
is talk
gatekeeping?
to
That's
him.
gatekeeping.
It is
All we had to do,
gatekeeping. Yeah, he's
Oh my
it is.
manipulating.
gosh.
All we had to do is talk to him,
I'm thinking
and then
about
it would
things
get to the
differently.
Father, right? So when I started hearing about, the Catholics and whatnot, and how they go into the booth to do their confessions and stuff, it made no sense to me, because I'm sitting there going,
It's weird, dude. It's a very
why
weird
are they
situation
doing
to be
that
in.
when it says you don't have to do that? All you have to do is that. You don't even have to do this. Why are you doing this?
I looked at it like
There
free
was a lot.
counseling.
That's
You
just
couldn't go
one
see
instance
your
where I was
therapist or
confused. Like,
counselor. You could just go to the Catholic Church and be
Kind
like,
of, except it's mandatory, and there's a weird aspect of getting a child into a booth with a stranger, and the stranger being like, "Tell me the worst thing that you did this week." It's like like the only
"Ooh,
other time that I've ever seen something that
really?"
made me feel the same way was Scientology. They have like an auditing part of their process where
Yeah,
and it's like bull baiting, but they'll be like, "Tell me your crimes. Tell me your crimes," and you're just like, "What do you mean?
yeah.
Like I don't have any crimes." And if you just keep asking it enough, eventually someone will just like muster a bad thing they've done. But that to me
They
kind of
wanna hold it over
the
your head.
dude, that encompass, because in my
That blackmailing.
conspiratorial mind, the Catholic Church is where the Bavarian Illuminati got their whole shtick from. It was like, if I can get dirt on you in a moment of weakness and confidentiality, I can use this over you. And now imagine if I hear everybody's dirt in the whole town, and you all know I know your dirt, I don't even have to say anything. Like everyone knows that I know about everybody's stuff. And that's kind of how an intelligence network starts. Like that's how Epstein operated. That's how almost every single blackmail operation operates, is that there'll be somebody that gets dirt on everybody else, and there's almost like um a honor among thieves aspect, that okay, I don't screw that guy because I can get screwed back, because we've all sort of, we all like took a stab at the dead body or something, so now we've all got our DNA, and we could all get arrested if one of us gets arrested.
The honor among thieves. I'm like, that's such
yes.
an oxymoron
Well,
when I hear that.
I'm gonna say we could wrap it up here, and greatly appreciate you hanging with us, and we'll have to have you again another time, obviously.
Anytime,
'Cause,
man. You guys
man,
are
we
awesome
can,
to talk to.
we
You
can.
can see it's
Boy,
very
I'm ready for
tangent
round
friendly.
2.
We like skee ball. Yeah. Well, we're gonna go with skee ball. Hey, how far away are you from Tampa?
I'm in Orlando, but like I'm downtown Orlando proper.
Okay, so
Oh, right on.
Lakeland. I want to say Lakeland. There's got to be a
No,
carnival
I'm
in
like
the
an
middle.
hour.
so
I'm
you can
like an
skee ball.
hour from Lakeland. I think a drive to Tampa is usually like 2.5
3.
for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, depending on traffic, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it could be
I
5.
wanna-
Who
Definitely.
knows?
I want to jokingly ask, are you going
Yeah.
to the next meetup? It's in St. Pete.
Oh, no. So the record on that, just FYI, it's true. I don't like to go outside in Florida. The same reason I didn't like the beach when I was a young kid. So I was quite literally dragged to that previous meetup because it was I have Juan go with me to places all the time, and it's one of those things where if you're always asking someone to go with you somewhere, and they ask you to go, like if I had a truck and I'm always asking you to move, and then you ask if I can help you move, there's sort of a balance that should be obtained just out of being cordial, right? So that
Joe,
original
you're
meetup was literally just like, all right, I kind of owe you this. Let's go and do this thing. So I don't like meetups. I don't like going and meeting people in person usually. It's really not my thing.
Like-
It's not personal. It's just business.
Mhm.
No, it's just it's not personal. I'm just a fucking
I
introvert.
like that
and-
tie-in. Right?
I'm like, I'm an
I hear ya.
introvert. I'm not very social butterfly, but I was joking with Joe. I say, if Tom goes, I'll go. And it's very much like you said. Maybe if you go, I'll go. But I was like, nah, I'm not going. We were gonna go. Normally
I don't
I
even like
see
going to
Joe.
family gatherings. So I mean, for me to go and meet a bunch of strangers out in real life, it's
It's
very
challenging.
unappealing. And I have to take a Xanax because I just don't like social situations in general. So it's a whole thing.
I hide behind my
Yeah.
phone camera. I'm like, if I act like the camera person and I'm just here to chit, like I hang out in the outside circle and I just kind of like, he'll go right up to the host and be like, hey, I'm Joe. And you might know me because I talk to everybody in chat. He goes right for it and he talks to everybody. And I'm sitting there going like, nobody wants to talk to me. I'm just going to hang over here and take pictures of butterflies and flowers. And meetups,
Yeah.
we went to 2 of them before, last summer. We were able to go to the one in Siesta Key and then
Tarpon
where that
Springs.
Tarpon Springs, and it was chill, it was laid back, it wasn't that bad. I always think things are worse than they are, and there wasn't that bad. So, but I was joking because of everything going on with the Bach saga. I was like, all I'm gonna do is stand on the other side of the street and just stare and maybe yell "swallow" once in a while because it's just the current situation going
As you
on.
do in Tampa.
Yeah, Tampa.
Yeah.
St. Pete. As he's instructed me, Joe's told me all about like the St. Pete history. I'm like, it's up and coming. They're cleaning up the neighborhood supposedly and stuff.
You know where I do? There's a couple places that I could easily be swayed to go to in Florida. Someone else was driving, or if I could teleport there. But St. Augustine is a huge one, and
Yeah.
and Key West, unbelievably, is a
Mm.
huge one. Although,
We love Key West.
dude, like the second that you start getting over those bridges, it's almost like this may be another bad analogy, but like back in the military when I actually had to like run all the time, there was always this dread when it wasn't on a circle. Like I wasn't in, like if I was actually out running to like a place, it's always like it feels great, but every step I take is another step I'm gonna have to take to get back to where I started from.
Oh.
And it makes me want to like just not go as far as I know I could and not run as long as I
Oh my
could,
God.
knowing there's
I
just an
get
easy way
that.
of just like, because dude, once you get to the actual keys, like if you want to go home, like you're at least 3 to 5 to 10 hours away from civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were fortunate to
We
go when
went
we first
twice.
moved down here. We got to go 3 months after moving down here. We had a few extra dollars after moving. We're saving it to go do something. And he goes, "What are we gonna do?" And I said, take me to the Keys. I want to go to the
Oh, yeah.
hottest place on earth that we can
Let's
drive
go
to.
get day drunk where it's normal.
Oh my God, I love it down there. So when my parents came down 2 months ago, my dad was debating whether or not we could pull it off because he was paying for all the transportation. And to say they worked on it and to go back down there a second time 2 years later, because we went back to Fort Taylor. Yeah, Zachary Taylor. There is 2 hot spots in that fort that are very, very dark, very unwelcoming,
There's some
welcoming, and
energy.
very pushback
Hmm.
in that fort. So I was like, "Oh, we're gonna go back. We're
Yeah.
gonna go see if those spots are still there, if we still get the same kind of feeling and the reading." And of course,
Mhm.
by the time we get there, I'm so exhausted because my parents are like adult toddlers. We're late. They don't know where to park. They don't know where they left their shoes. I'm just like, "Oh my god, I don't wanna be here anymore
Like
because
Gilbert,
to
They're
take
Florida.
care
a
of
bunch of
somebody else."
fumbling, bumbling. It
Yeah,
was
I
bad.
was like,
These
"We
are
made it."
non-Floridians, clearly.
Oh my god. They didn't even wanna they don't
Yeah.
like f they act like Florida. We've been here 2 years. The hurricanes are coming. The gators are in the canal, and they're like, "We're all gonna die." And I'm like, "We're still here." There's 20 million people minimum in Florida year round. We're still here. We're not gonna die. So then they show up and they're
Some of us
here and
will.
they're trying to act
Right.
like they're not convinced that Florida is
Darwinism.
a great place. They're like they won't
I
admit
I
that Florida is
think
a
that
great place.
any person that's never been to Florida, like if your parents the first time they ever come, you should just bring them directly to Key West. Don't even let them know that anything else in Florida exists. Just right to Key West and convince them that this is what Florida is. Like every city in Florida is just like this.
Well, then my dad starts giving history lessons because he remembers history class. He goes, "This is all Spanish influenced, and then the French, and then the this, and then that." And I'm like, "You don't get that in Michigan. It's a little bit of, well, here's the loggers, and they cut down all the trees." But he actually was like, they won't admit the look on their face walking around in Florida because they're like 70 years old. The heat was helping them, and the heat was better for them. The walking around, and they just kind of they were enjoying themselves more than they would like admit to it. And I'm like, "So we'll see you next year, right? But get your own damn hotel." Because they stayed with us, so it was like kinda like a throwback of so the kids so they could be around the kids and everything, but you need to get your own hotel, and you need to come for the weekend, and you need to be more snowbirds because you know you like it here. And, like, they won't admit it because what was the other place? He wanted to go both my parents I grew up with, um Republican traditional minded parents that have now become Democratic liberals. They asked us before they got here, "Is there a way to go to where Trump lives?" 'Cause that my parents, they're 70 years
Oh,
old.
yeah.
They wanna take a picture in front of Trump's house flipping him the bird.
Mar-a-Lago?
I'm like, "You guys wanna do what?" God, you sound like hippies. I know that was your decade and everything, but damn.
What are
I'm
they gonna
like,
do
"You
with that
wanna"
picture? It just goes on Facebook, right?
I
Who
get and not
knows?
even that because my dad's very careful about what he posts. But he just wants a picture, like, it's just personal, it's very personal. It's like, how
When he
personal
shows
is
up to
it?
St. Peter at the gate, he could be like, "See, I flicked Trump off, so let me in. I'm a good
I was
one."
like, "These are not my parents. I don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
This is not how they act and what they do, that when they come to Florida, they wanna go find Trump and flip him off." I was like
It's
Yeah.
just media
And
consumption,
there's
that's all it is.
that
And
Yes.
they
I
are
don't even fault anyone for that because the same way that I'd always wanna believe dinosaurs exist because I just grew up with so many dinosaur cartoons and movies, like, I'm not ready to give that one up. I think a lot of people are like that. The same reason that your parents maybe don't want to admit that Florida is a decent place is just because they've already ground their heels in so far
Oh,
that
they
at this
have.
point, it's almost
Yeah.
like regret would set in once you admit it.
It was just bizarre for me to the last 5 years to keep telling Joe, I said, "These are not the parents that raised me. I don't know who these people are." What is that? Is it like a movie where your parents get switched out or just like not doppelgangers, but um
Or like Body Snatcher, Invasion of the
body
Body
snatchers.
Snatchers,
Yeah.
right?
I was like, "These are not my parents." These are the
No.
opposite of my parents. And I get changing your mind about stuff, but I don't know, it's just so much more, I hate to use the word
Well, look at Trump.
radical,
Trump
but
started out as a New York liberal Democrat, right, in the 90s, and he himself switched. So maybe they were both like just kind of like crossed each other as they were.
Polar
I
paradigms.
just
And they're just
They
it
saw
is
Trump
weird.
come in and they were like, "Whoop, time to get in the other
whoop,
pool."
time to go.
I'm just like, no, it's so I'm like
Oh man.
35 years of my life, my parents were this way, and then I'm having a midlife crisis because my parents are the 180, they're a polar opposite. They still have some of the same habits they've always done, personal hobbies, but I'm just overall, I'm like just in the shock of going, "They're not my parents. I don't know who these people are." And they wanna throw it in my face. My mom would always throw it in my face, "This isn't how I raised you." And I'm like, "You didn't raise me. The schools did and the cable box." I sat there watching MTV all the time. So I've mentioned before, I was like, Madonna was like a role model, Janet Jackson and Cyndi Lauper and like females were that were just colorful and not the norm. I said, "That's what I gravitated
And they
towards."
didn't make you
I
clean your room either.
Yep.
my god.
At least I don't think Madonna ever told me to clean my room.
No, it was a creative outlet of destruction. I wasn't gravitated
Absolutely.
towards, anything I did see some of, like there was a Hallmark Channel, and to say there was some nice things, like, even when Mariah Carey came out, she was like the American Girl, she was a nice version, she was modest. I liked her voice, but that was it. But it wasn't as appealing as and I don't know, relatable or something as to say Madonna and Cyndi Lauper and then anybody else. Sinead O'Connor was a bit too much for me. I don't know why. When she shaved her head, it just was, like, unappealing to me. But I ended up doing that years later. I fucked up my hair so bad, it was so bad, I just shaved my head, and I was like, "Wow, this is kinda freeing. I look like a fucking badass, and I had a nice
I'm
shaved
telling
head."
you, man, it's the best.
I tease him all the time going, I have thick, dense, heavy hair, and I am so ready to just shave it and just be done or have, like, little, short and style it a certain way, but I'm still compelled to be, like, long, running through the crazy jungle of Florida, Amazonic crazy mop hair to just try and grow it out, and our daughter has the same problem. Thick, heavy, dense hair. We used to have undercut and it would take a lot of the weight off, but it was this, what's the norm? What's standard? The style? I'm like, I'm just trying to fucking survive, but I don't wanna look too crazy because it just yeah, I don't know. Anyways,
Yeah.
I could keep
Yeah.
talking, but
Yeah. We need to we'll do another one later.
Yeah, I'm down
We'll
for a
have you
part 2 whenever, man.
yeah, we'll do a part 2. So our schedule is pretty much mostly open for the most part. So it's like
pretty much
your
open.
time's our time. So just let us know
Yeah,
what
we're
day
in
works
Florida.
for you and we'll make it happen pretty much. But I guess until then, you got any last words you want to throw out there?
I mean, just thanks for having me on. I love having casual conversations like this where we don't necessarily have to give presentations or anything and just kind of like spit about our personal experiences. I love that it's fun. Thanks for having me. And anyone watching, if you want to see any of the other stuff, you can see most of it at paranoidamerican.com. Although, like I said, there's a lot of people that know me just from music, some people that know me just from animations, just from comics. Some people only know me through the occult Disney podcast that's like 60 episodes deep right now. So I would out of all the ones based on what we were talking about here today, I definitely recommend the Occult Disney podcast. I think you can go to occultdisney.com. I don't think they take that away from me yet. They will at some point when they find out it exists, they'll take it away. But until you can go to occultdisney.com and that'll bring you to that whole playlist.
I was trying to get through the Fantasia
Awesome.
one because you were just doing
That's the first one.
Fantasia.
Oh yeah.
The Fantasia
Well,
2000.
so we did both. The very first episode was the first Fantasia, and then we just recently, a couple weeks ago, did Fantasia 2000. which is almost like a revisiting of Fantasia. But I highly
Yeah.
recommend starting with the first Fantasia, because that sets the whole theory that the Fantasia movie itself is Disney as a corporation casting a very real magic spell to create the Disney universe, which is also a very real thing right now. Even if it's abstract, the Disney universe will last longer than any American family dynasty. So that's the whole premise of that first
I was gonna
episode,
ask
and everything
you,
builds on that.
I don't wanna hold you any longer, but I was gonna ask you, what do you think about people who say they hate that movie? Like,
The
I
original
personally
the original Fantasia?
I buffered, but yeah, like, I don't like Fantasia, I hate Fantasia.
Well, I mean, it's a anthology of different clips. So do you hate every single one of the clips in the entire Fantasia series?
I do not enjoy that movie. Like, it weirds me out like Pinocchio and Dumbo.
Oh, I mean, there might be something about Disney in general that just weirds you out, because I could see being weirded out by Dumbo and Pinocchio. They're very scary. They're very off-putting. So
Okay,
some of that
so
same vibe is in Fantasia. So you might just be adverse to classic Disney period, and it's not specific to Fantasia in that case. But I would say that Fantasia, especially where they introduce the black god Chernobog, who's like that big silhouette that's on top of the mountain, and they have and I'm blanking on the names of the songs, but it's like one of the most famous songs, followed by Ode to Joy or something. But that particular scene, even though it's scary, that's kind of like the Disney representation of everything that's to come. That's them showing you that for the next decades, that they're going to be showing all these old like Germanic folklore tales that are based on paganism. And then there's like this fight between good and evil and stuff. I don't know, I find that stuff so fascinating. I don't think as a kid I liked it, because it was either scary or boring, and there wasn't like a protagonist that you could kind of follow along. So I almost
yeah.
think that Fantasia is more for like an adult audience, that if you watch it through the perspective of mythology and not as a classic Disney movie that's going to carry you along through a story, it's easier to appreciate. But yeah, I mean, I didn't like the second one at all. The Fantasia 2000, I hated it until I had to rewatch it and had to force myself to look for meaning in some of it, and then I started to appreciate it more. But again, there's
Oh,
an infinite amount of media out there, so if there's something you don't like, there's
yeah.
no reason to like try and force yourself to like it. There's too many options.
I usually hear people talk about certain movies and it's their favorite, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Mary Poppins, and I'm sitting there going,
Definitely not Poppins for me.
I hate those movies.
She
Charlie and the
was a
Chocolate
horrible
Factory.
person.
That was
She gaslit those children. If you watch that movie again, she takes them out, brings them into another dimension where they might even get trapped, because Dick Van Dyke's a drunk at this point and he can't be trusted. But even though they make it back, they start to tell her about how great the day was, and she's like, "What do you mean? We didn't do any of that." It's so wild to watch that as an adult, thinking like, imagine you did this to a real child, right? You brought them, you showed them different dimensions and magic, and all this stuff is real. You blow their mind, and then you, the person that just introduced them to all these new possibilities, sat there and was like, "No, none of that. You're just making stuff up. I have no idea what you're talking about." That blows, dude. That's such a nefarious movie. Like, there's so many Disney movies that do really weird, harmful thing. Way worse than like, oh my god, they might be sneaking in hidden satanic messages and pagan. That's great. You know what's even worse than that is like telling these kids that even if your parents die, don't worry, because you'll make friends with a cartoon chipmunk that'll be on a t-shirt
my
and a lunchbox.
yeah.
Like, that to me is way more evil than some like Dick Castle on the front of like a movie poster, right?
The Little Mermaid.
right.
That is actually my favorite movie.
There's another
Oh.
horrible story behind that. The original Hans Christian Andersen is that the Little Mermaid discovers that mermaids have no souls, and when they die, they just turn into sand essentially. But that humans have souls, but she can obtain a soul, but only if she tricks it out of a human by making a human fall in love with her. And if the human falls in love, then she gets her own soul, and she breaks free and gets to enter this new like enlightenment phase of humanity. But if she doesn't convince the guy to fall in love with her, then she can steal his soul by killing him. So she actually fails to win his love, and then all of her sisters and all of her friends are basically like, well, then go kill him. The only way you're going to get a soul now is if you go and kill him. And she did. So that's the original story that's all based on, and the beats are still in there, but in the
I heard a
movie, it's her
different
voice.
version, but not.
Well, she loses her voice in the movie and she can't communicate, but in the original story, it wasn't the voice, it was her actual soul, and she was trying to get a human soul out of the end of that. It was very much like she was out to steal a soul from a human. That's
I
the
would
real
almost
story.
rather watch that version.
Right?
That
Right?
seems more
most
interesting.
Disney
Like,
movies. I
what?
would rather see the real version
Wow.
that they didn't.
The other version, or I thought was the one of the versions, is that she ended up dying to save the prince, and she turned into sea foam or something to
that
save him,
that's
and
pretty
he
much how it
marries somebody
ends,
else.
because in a like a moral tale, the prince doesn't love her back in time for them to get married and make it official for her to get a soul.
Oh, okay.
And in like all of her family is like, well, then kill him. If he doesn't love you and give a soul, go steal it. And she still loved him so much, and she had enough morality that she was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I would rather just turn into sea foam and let the human, like, leave the human soul alone. And that was like
Mhm.
the original stuff. So it had like a dark aspect, but she still ended up being kind of the good person at the end. But the whole vibe was like, we're out here stealing souls. Like, that was the whole
Oh my
concept. It had
god.
nothing to do with like, I want to find true love.
They should
The
make the,
Soul Stealer.
they should have the Disney version and then, like, the Disney dark version, which is, like, the truer story. They should make that one too, because, like, as an adult, you're like, "What's the truth? I'll pay money for that. I'm not artistically talented, but to see somebody, like, give me that version of the story
Well, I'm doing my
for."
best. That's kind of where this all started, right? I was at
That
Disney
is
working
incredible.
with animators that had worked on Lion King and all these huge movies, and I was just thinking to myself, what if I could get these guys to like help me tell the story of the Franklin scandal and not about the Lion King? You know what I mean? That really is where it all started. Like, what if they were talking about MK Ultra and not Adam Sandler's, 8 Crazy Nights, which was another movie that came through our studio. And that's exactly how Paranoid American was born. Was me looking at my other Disney animator friends and like, dude, what if we just started talking about 9/11?
Dude, they're like, yeah. You start
Yeah, no,
scaring
a lot of them
people
were
for
like, no, I
sure.
actually like my job. I'm not going to do that.
I know. I'm like, that's the gatekeeping of gatekeeping. They're like, all right, well,
Gatekeeping round
gate-
1 done. We will set up gatekeeping round 2 down the road.
There's so many gates. There's too
It'll,
many.
it'll be great.
it's blowing my
So,
mind how limited I think I was to call it something else, like redirecting or just avoiding it. And then because you popped in at the other stream we had, and you said, well, that's gatekeeping, and I was like, I heard the word, I just couldn't, like, really tag it to anything, and I've been hearing it for, like, 2 years on and off, so when you said it, at that moment, it was like, "Oh, okay," and then I kept,
no.
perseverating on it. Joe talked to you in Instagram and was like, I guess that's why he was like, "Why don't we talk about it?" Because 'Cause I'm
Like
talking about it or I'm sitting on it,
gatekeeping.
and Joe's like, "Why don't we just talk about it?" He doesn't tell me he sent you the message or talked to you until after you responded, 'cause then he comes over and tells me, "Hey, look, Tom wants to talk," or something, and I was like,
Yeah, dude, I'll talk with anyone about anything pretty much at least once. Like, no, like, even if going in, if I know someone that is completely on the opposite side of me, even if I find them repugnant, I'll still have them on. I'll still have a conversation. Like, I don't see any wasted time in that, especially if
I
it's not for
noticed
me, if it's for
that.
other people.
I was checking out your
Yeah.
podcast, and I'm like, "I think I can tell he's being cheeky with him." I don't remember which one it was. It wa you were talking to
That's
somebody, and you were
most of
just
them.
like, "Huh?"
Yeah,
That's
that's
most
most
of them.
of
I'm
them.
usually cheeky with everybody.
I'm like, You're giving them, like, the dignity, respect to hear them out, but I could just, like, pick up on something where you're like, No, but okay.
Well, if you like my 10 questions, you'll notice that there's a pattern as I usually butt up the
Yes.
"Do you believe in dinosaurs?" with the "Do you believe in dragons?" Because for the longest time, it would be weird that like 0 dinosaurs, 10 on dragons, and I always like to follow that up with like, why is that? Because there's like dragons come from fairy tales and it's older, right? But dinosaurs come from textbooks and that's newer. So it usually just presents to
Yep.
somebody where it's like, yeah, I either believe in old fairy tales more than I believe in new textbooks. And if that's the case, is it just because it's new, or is it just because it came from like the academic institutions? Like, what if dragons were taught by the schools? Does it have anything to do with the actual dragons and dinosaurs, or do you just hate school so much that you hate dinosaurs? And do you just love the Bible so much and you just love folklore so much that you love dragons? I don't know, it's weird.
Right. I just thought it was funny you would ask at the end of the oh, pretty much the end of the stream, and some of these individuals would get triggered by the question, and they wouldn't even answer you directly. You were just like on a scale of 1 to 10 of how like yes, 10 and no, and they wouldn't even answer you about flat earth. They would just get like triggered or something. I'm sitting there going, you could just say 1, say no, and move on to the next one. And they're just like they're ready to tell you.
Well, that's the point, because it's a
They're just
little
ready
bit
to
of a
vent.
litmus test that if you're like yes or no only, and I couldn't do yes or no because that almost invited way too much like justifications and like people prepping
Yeah.
it. So the 1 to 10 at least lets somebody say like a 3 or a 5, and on
Little
the 10.
variable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but
But
but if
it's very interesting.
maybe at some point I'll
Really
narrow
cool.
it down to just the yes or no, because that's the trickiest one, and you can tell that the people that seem to have the most conviction with themselves, they'll be happy to just be like, "Oh, that's yes." Even in their mind, they're only like a 51% yes. It's still enough to be like that. It's more yes than no. But the people that are like, we never want to land on something, yes or no, it's almost like I feel that they do want to land on one of those, but they just can't do it in public on record, because someone might see them and it
Mm.
might disagree with something that they thought or said some other time. So I also realize uh, I'm very aware of this, but I don't make it known like on the show. But like that's just a litmus. Like if we did it right now, that would just be your opinion at 6:25 on a Sunday in 2024. And if we did this again in 4 hours, like you might register differently. Like you don't have to be
Right.
married to all these things, but the nature of this, and if you only come on the show once in a year, then some people think that that's just what you think forever. But that's exactly why I like that dynamic, is because someone almost feels like, oh no, this might be like the record on whether I not believe in flat Earth, and
Right.
am I an advocate
It's
or am I
stamped and
not?
sealed, like that's
Yeah.
it. You cannot change your mind.
Which isn't true, but it feels like it's true, which is the only reason that asking someone to give like a straight up number works so well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your podcasts are more interesting. I don't think I listened to them 6 months ago where I was just listening to the Disney occult stuff because the information of I wanted to know something, and you and your, co-host buddy talking
Matt
about
Comedies,
it,
yeah, shout out Matt.
we're just talking, and I'm just like in that moment from 6 months ago to even now, like even 5 years ago, just a lot of stuff has changed to even just being so much more relaxed and letting it go and considering information and being like, "Damn, I don't know," and that's okay.
Keep
So,
asking those annoying questions. Those are
yeah,
the most
still
interesting
asking.
ones, are the ones that irritate people, because there's a reason. I think in my mind, the reason that people get irritated over questions is because it's frustrating and they've already accepted that either they're not going to get a sufficient answer or they don't understand it, and they've like buried that hatchet. And when someone else comes up with that same damn question, it's just a reminder that they never got to answer it themselves. And now you reminding them of their own inability to come to terms with something, like it's almost like you just walked up and started picking at like a scab on their arm. It's like, stop that, like I'm waiting for that thing to heal. It's like, but why? But why? But why?
Yep, I'm a boat why kind of person, depending on how much energy I wanna give it, but raising kids definitely zaps out your energy.
Yeah.
So I do it
Oh
to
my
Joe a lot. I
oh
do it to
my
Joe a lot.
gosh.
I'm like,
That reminds me of Olaf. You know Olaf? Yeah.
Yeah,
Why?
the snowman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why?
Why? That's all. Yeah. Why?
Exactly. Can relate to that.
Just keep
Okay, we're
going,
not
yeah,
gonna
why?
keep you from dinner. We could
Yes,
keep
I'm getting hungry
talking.
myself
This is
now.
definitely enjoyable. I really appreciate you giving us the time of
Yeah.
day
Thank you so
to
much,
just
and
hang out and chat.
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thanks for everyone that was in
So-
chat. Appreciate all you guys. And yet, yes, Bernie, I'm there
Oh.
for tomorrow.
In
Yes.
chat or lurking, because I'm a lurker too sometimes. If I see it in chat, I always say, "Hi, welcome to everybody in chat and watching," but
Yep.
lurking. I go, "It's okay to lurk. That's how we learn. Not
That's it.
stalking, but lurking."
All right, we're gonna roll out the outros here, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
Now that's a happy ending. Or is it?
Jordan fades back, swoosh, and that's the game! Nothing further, Your Honor. As he lost his mind, don't wanna be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the new media. The subliminal mind, America. Welcome to a new
Everything's over now. And all that's left is you and the infinite void.
sending to outer space to find another race. I'm gonna send into outer space to find another race.
Hello, boys! I'm back! What is happening? I said, what? Yeah! I said, what? I said, yeah! I said, what? I said, yeah! I said, no! I said, no! I said, what? I said, yeah! I said, what? I said, yeah! I said, what? I said, yeah! The building is on fire!
Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions.
After you, no, you first.
When you tell somebody something, it depends on what part of the United States you're standing in as to just how dumb you are.
Grandma, you can't just kick me out. I can too.
Quick, change the channel. Hold up. Hey. This must never be seen by anyone.
Here goes. I sped. I followed too closely. I ran a stop sign. I almost hit a Chevy. I sped some more. I failed to yield at a crosswalk. I changed lanes in the intersection. I changed lanes without signaling while running a red light and speeding.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Yes?
Not you, him. What's your name?
Me.
Yes, you.
I am me. He's me. And I'm you.
You, me, everybody.
Morning. Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.